She's been working as a contract killer for the highest bidder ever since. Who hired her? She doesn't know. The contract came through an encrypted platform, payment in cryptocurrency, target package delivered via dead drop, professional distance. Smart. Lena sipped her coffee. Whoever wants you dead knows how to insulate themselves. Unfortunately, Adrian pulled up a photo on his laptop, turning it so she could see. But she did give us this. The screen showed a symbol, a circle bisected by a vertical line with 3 smaller circles arranged in a triangle beneath it. Simple, geometric, meaningless to most people. But Lena recognized it. Her hand froze halfway to setting down her cup. Adrian caught the reaction. You've seen this before. It wasn't a question. No, Lena lied. Your pupils dilated, your breathing changed, and you just stopped mid-motion. Don't insult me by pretending you don't recognize it. Damn. He was too observant, too trained in reading people. Where did she see it? Lena asked instead of answering. Tattooed on the wrist of the man who gave her the target package. Small, easily hidden, but distinctive. Adrian closed the laptop. So I'll ask again. Do you know what this means? Lena set down the coffee carefully, buying time to think. The symbol was old, dangerous, connected to a world she'd thought she'd escaped. Seeing it here, in Adrian's world, meant something had followed her, or she'd walked into something worse than she'd realized. It's a marker, she said finally, used by certain organizations to identify their assets. Like a brand, but voluntary. What organizations? The kind that don't leave witnesses. Adrian absorbed this, expression unreadable. And how does a waitress know about covert organizational markers? I read a lot. Try again. I used to work in corporate finance. The partial truth tasted like ash. You see things. Patterns in money movement, shell companies, offshore accounts. Sometimes those patterns have signatures. And this symbol is one of those signatures. It could be. What does it mean? Lena met his gaze. It means whoever wants you dead has resources you can't fight with money or muscle. It means they're connected, organized, and patient. And it means this won't stop with one failed assassin. The weight of that settled between them. Then I guess I'm lucky to have you, Adrian said quietly. I'm not staying. Yes, you are. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Because whoever sent that woman knows you took her down, which makes you a target too. And unlike me, you don't have a private army. I can take care of myself. Like you did last night, with a vase? Adrian's smile was sharp. You're skilled, Lena. I'm not blind. But skill doesn't stop a bullet from a roof you never saw coming. So here's the new deal. You stay, you help me figure out who's trying to kill me, and in exchange, I keep you alive. I didn't agree to be a consultant. You became one the moment you recognized that symbol. He moved to the door, then paused. Marcus is pulling together everything we have on recent threats, enemies, business rivals who might want me gone. I want you to look at it. Fresh eyes, financial background. See if you spot patterns my people missed. And if I refuse? Then you walk out that door and take your chances with whoever put that tattoo on their wrist and a contract on my head. Adrian opened the door. Your choice, Lena. It's always been your choice. After he left, Lena sat in the silence of his expensive suite, surrounded by luxury built on blood, and realized she'd been wrong about something fundamental. She thought she'd saved Adrian Cade twice, but really, she'd saved herself. And now both their lives depended on finding a killer who wore their allegiance like a secret. The war room was exactly what Lena expected. Dark wood, leather chairs, screens displaying real-time data feeds, and enough paranoia to choke on. Marcus stood at the head of a conference table covered in files, photographs, and tablets. 4 other men flanked him, Adrian's inner circle, each carrying the particular stillness of people who'd killed before and would again. Lena was the only woman in the room, the only outsider, the only one not wearing a gun. Gentlemen, Adrian said as he entered, Lena trailing behind him, this is Lena Hart. She'll be assisting with threat analysis. Anything you'd say to me, you can say in front of her. The men exchanged glances. Marcus's jaw tightened. With respect, boss, one of them said, a broad-shouldered man with a Brooklyn accent and scarred knuckles. We don't know her. We don't know where she came from, and she's already been involved in 2 incidents in 3 days. Oh, which is exactly why she's here, Tommy. Adrian took his seat at the head of the table. She's spotted threats my entire security team missed. That makes her useful. Or suspicious. Or both. Which is why Marcus will continue his background investigation while she helps us find whoever's trying to put me in the ground. Adrian looked at Lena. Sit. She took the empty chair beside him, acutely aware of the eyes tracking her every movement. Marcus pulled up a digital board. Current threat assessment. In the last 6 months, we've had 3 credible attempts on Adrian's life. First was a car bomb, disabled before detonation. Second was a poisoning attempt at a restaurant caught by our food tester. Third was 2 nights ago, the sniper. Escalation, Lena observed. Each attempt more direct, more personal. Exactly. Marcus highlighted a timeline. Someone's getting desperate. Or bolder. Or both. Lena leaned forward, studying the data. What about financial irregularities, money trails, unusual transactions, offshore movement? Clean, Tommy said. We monitor all accounts daily, nothing suspicious. What about your competitors, business rivals? Plenty of those, another man spoke up. Older, silver-haired, with the careful diction of an accountant. But none stupid enough to try a direct hit. The retaliation would destroy them. Unless they think they can win, Lena said. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Keep going. If someone's making a play for your territory, they'd need 3 things: capital, connections, and courage. The first 2 you can buy. The third only comes if you think you can survive the aftermath. She pulled one of the tablets toward her, scrolling through financial reports. What about internal? Anyone positioned to benefit from your death? The silence was sharp. You're suggesting a coup, Marcus said flatly. I'm suggesting you look at motive. Who gains if Adrian dies? Who's positioned to take over? Who's been making moves that look like preparation? Everyone in this room is loyal, Tommy growled. We've bled for this family. I'm sure you have. Lena kept her voice neutral. But loyalty doesn't pay the bills. And if someone offered the right price or the right leverage, enough. Adrian's voice cut through the rising tension. She's asking the right questions. Questions we should have been asking. He looked at Marcus. Pull financial records for everyone with access to my schedule for the last year. Cross-reference with known associates, family members, debts. If someone's compromised, I want to know. That's everyone, Marcus protested. From drivers to lawyers to everyone. No room for argument. We're being hunted from the inside. Time to find out who's holding the knife. The meeting continued for another hour. Names, faces, possibilities examined and discarded. Lena absorbed it all, filing away details, building a mental map of Adrian's empire. It was impressive, terrifying, built on a foundation of violence and fear that most people couldn't imagine. But it was also fragile, because empires built on fear collapse the moment someone stops being afraid. The breakthrough came 3 days later. Lena had spent 72 hours buried in financial records, cross-referencing transactions, following money trails that wound through shell corporations and offshore accounts. She'd barely slept, living on coffee and the particular focus that came from hunting patterns in chaos. She'd done this before. In another life, another name, she'd been brilliant at it, and the skills hadn't faded. Adrian, she said, bursting into his office without knocking, I found something. He looked up from a phone call, held up one finger. I'll call you back. No, now. He ended the call. What is it? Lena spread printouts across his desk. Your safe house, the one in Brooklyn, the lease payment. What about it? It's been going to the wrong account for the last 3 months. Small discrepancy, easy to miss in the noise. But it's there. Adrian studied the documents. This account number belongs to a shell company registered in Delaware. Single owner, Munson. No business activity except receiving your rent payments. She pulled up another page. And that same company has been making regular payments to a security consulting firm. Which firm? Nightfall Solutions. They specialize in executive protection, surveillance, counterintelligence. Lena met his eyes. And they employ Yuki Tanaka. The temperature in the room dropped. Someone's been paying my rent to a company that hired the woman who tried to kill me, Adrian said slowly. Not just that. Lena highlighted another section. Look at the timing. The account switch happened exactly 1 week before the first assassination attempt. Someone was setting up infrastructure. Who authorized the account change? That's the interesting part. She pulled up a personnel file. The authorization came from your accounting department, signed off by your CFO. But when I checked the digital signature, it's forged. Very well forged, good enough to fool automated systems, but not perfect. Lena zoomed in on the signature analysis. Whoever did this had access to your CFO's credentials, knew the approval process, and understood how to exploit the gaps in oversight. Adrian's expression hardened into something dangerous. Marcus, the head of security, appeared within seconds. Boss? Lock down the accounting department, no one in or out. I want every computer, every phone, every piece of paper secured. Adrian stood, radiating controlled fury. And bring me Vincent. Your CFO? Marcus's eyes widened. I think someone used his credentials to funnel money to the people trying to kill me. Whether he's complicit or compromised, I'm going to find out. After Marcus left, Lena gathered her printouts. There's more. Of course there is. The safe house has been bugged. Professional work, military-grade equipment. Someone's been listening to everything that happens there for months. How do you know? Because I found the equipment invoices. She showed him another document. Billed to the same shell company, purchased 2 weeks before the account switch. Whoever's doing this has been planning it for a long time. Adrian moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. The safe house is where I take people I don't trust to the penthouse. Business rivals, potential threats, anyone who needs to be. Which means whoever's listening knows your leverage, your weaknesses, your strategies. Everything. He turned to face her. You found all this in 3 days. I'm good with numbers. You're better than good. He stopped himself, studying her. You've done this before. Not just financial analysis, forensic accounting, tracking dirty money, following trails that were meant to disappear. Lena's pulse kicked up. I worked in corporate finance. This is what we did. This is what federal investigators do. FBI, financial crimes, the kind of work that puts people in prison. Adrian crossed to her, crowding her space. So I'll ask one more time, Lena Hart. Who are you? She should have lied, should have deflected, dodged, maintained the cover she'd built so carefully. But Adrian Cade had just watched her dismantle part of a conspiracy in 72 hours. Had seen her take down an assassin with a vase. Had noticed every slip, every tell, every moment she revealed too much skill. The cover was already blown. The only question was how much truth to give him. My name is Lana, she said quietly. That part's true. The rest is complicated. Uncomplicate. I can't. Can't or won't? Does it matter? Adrian's jaw tightened. You're in my home, eating my food, working alongside my people. You've saved my life twice and just uncovered a plot to destroy me from the inside. So yes, Lena, it matters, because I need to know if I can trust you. You can't trust anyone. That's the whole problem. I'm trusting you right now. Then you're a fool. Maybe. He didn't step back, didn't give her space. Or maybe I recognize someone running from the same kind of monsters I deal with every day. Maybe I see someone who's more afraid of being found than being killed. And maybe... His voice softened. Maybe I want to help. The words hit harder than they should have. Lena looked away, blinking against sudden heat behind her eyes. You can't help me. Try me. You really want to know? She faced him again, decision made. Fine. 3 years ago, I was the youngest chief financial analyst at Meridian International, billion-dollar hedge fund, Manhattan office, corner view of Central Park. I was good at my job, too good. I found irregularities, traced them, discovered my boss, the man I trusted, the man who'd mentored me, was running the largest Ponzi scheme since Madoff. Adrian's expression didn't change. What happened? I reported it. Did everything right. Went to the SEC, the FBI, brought them evidence, and while I was building the case, someone killed him. Made it look like suicide. Except I was there. I saw it happen. Saw the man who did it. Her hands clenched. They tried to kill me too. Made it look like I was part of the scheme, a co-conspirator tying up loose ends. My face was on the news. My name was poison. So I died. Lena Hart. Elena Hartwell. The truth tasted strange after 3 years of lies. I faked my death, built a new identity, and disappeared. Been waitressing and staying invisible ever since. She met his eyes. Until I saved the life of a crime lord and got pulled back into exactly the kind of world I was running from. Silence. Then, Meridian International. Adrian pulled out his phone, typed quickly. I remember that case. $2 billion in investor losses, dozens of arrests, criminal trials that lasted years. He showed her the screen, a news article with a photo of a younger woman in a business suit, polished and confident. This is you. Was me. You testified, put 12 people in prison. 14, but who's counting? Adrian pocketed his phone. So you're not just good with numbers. You're a forensic accountant who dismantled a criminal empire and survived the fallout. Barely. But you did survive. Changed your name, changed your life, stayed hidden. He smiled, sharp and approving. Smart. If I was smart, I wouldn't have saved you. If you hadn't saved me, you'd still be slinging noodles and lying to yourself about being safe. Adrian returned to his desk, pulling up files. Elena Hartwell was declared dead in a car accident. Body burned beyond recognition, dental records confirmed through a bribed coroner, death certificate filed properly. Professional work. I know people. Clearly. He closed the laptop. So here's the question. Are you going to help me find who's trying to kill me, or are you going to run again? Lena should have run. Should have packed her bag, walked out, disappeared into another city with another name. But looking at Adrian, at the crime lord who'd somehow become an ally, at the man who'd just listened to her confession without judgment, she realized something. She was tired of running. I'll help, she said. But when this is over, I'm gone. And you forget you ever knew me. Deal. Adrian extended his hand. Welcome to the war, Elena Hartwell. She took it. It's still Lena. That part stays dead. Lena, then. He didn't let go. Thank you for trusting me. Don't make me regret it. I'll do my best. Vincent Caruso, chief financial officer of Adrian Cade's legitimate business operations, was 53 years old, balding, and currently zip-tied to a chair in a basement Lena really wished she hadn't seen. I swear to you, Vincent pleaded, sweat rolling down his face, I didn't authorize any account changes. Someone must have hacked my credentials. Your credentials require biometric confirmation, Marcus said flatly, standing in the corner with arms crossed. Fingerprint and retinal scan, so either you authorized it or someone cut off your finger and scooped out your eyeball. There are ways to fake biometrics. You have to believe me. Adrian sat across from Vincent, perfectly calm, hands folded on the metal table between them. I want to believe you, Vincent. You've worked for me for 8 years. You've been loyal, competent, careful, which is why this is so disappointing. I didn't do it. Then explain how your credentials authorized a payment reroute that funded the woman who tried to kill me. Vincent's face crumbled. I don't know. I swear I don't know. Lena watched from the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. This was the part of Adrian's world she'd hoped to avoid. The violence, the interrogation, the particular brutality of men who'd learned that fear was more effective than facts. But she'd agreed to help. And helping meant being here. Let me talk to him, she said quietly. Everyone turned. Marcus frowned. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Please, Lena added. Adrian considered, then nodded. 5 minutes. Marcus and the guards stepped out. Adrian remained, silent observer. Lena pulled up a chair beside Vincent, close enough to speak softly. Vincent, I need you to think carefully. In the last 6 months, has anyone asked you unusual questions about Adrian's accounts? Security protocols, access procedures? No, I don't discuss that with anyone. What about your assistants? They don't have the clearance. Family? Friends? Someone you trust? Vincent's eyes flickered, just for a second, but Lena caught it. Who? She pressed gently. It's nothing. It's Vincent. She put her hand on his, maternal and firm. Someone used your credentials to try to kill Adrian. If you didn't do it, someone close to you did. Help me find them before they try again. The CFO's shoulders sagged. My son, Michael. He's been troubled. Gambling debts, bad investments. He came to me 6 months ago, desperate. Said he owed money to dangerous people. How much? 200,000. Lena glanced at Adrian, whose expression had gone very still. Did you pay it? She asked. No. I told him to declare bankruptcy, face the consequences. We argued. He said I didn't understand, that these people would kill him. Vincent's voice broke. He said he'd find another way. When was this? 4 months ago, right before... Vincent stopped, realization dawning. Right before I got the new security token for the biometric system. The company said it was a routine upgrade, sent a technician to install it. A technician you didn't verify, Marcus said from the doorway. He'd been listening. I assumed it was legitimate. Never assume. Adrian stood, expression cold. Where's your son now? I don't know. We haven't spoken since the argument. Find him, Adrian told Marcus. Bring him here. Alive. And Vincent? Marcus gestured at the zip-tied CFO. Adrian looked at the man who'd served him faithfully for nearly a decade, now broken and crying in a basement chair. He didn't betray me intentionally. His son did. He moved to the door. Cut him loose, put him on administrative leave until this is resolved. And Vincent? Yes? The CFO looked up, desperate and grateful. If you knew about this and didn't tell me, if you helped your son in any way, I'll find out. And blood won't protect you. Understood? I swear, Adrian. I swear I didn't know. Adrian left without answering. In the hallway, Lena caught up to him. You believe him? I believe he's a father who made a mistake. Adrian's jaw tightened. But his son used him as a weapon. That's unforgivable. What are you going to do? What I do to everyone who tries to kill me. He looked at her. Unless you have a better idea? Lena thought about Michael Caruso. Young, desperate, drowning in debt to people who knew exactly how to exploit weakness. They'd offered him a way out. All he had to do was betray his father's trust and plant a compromised security token. Easy, almost painless, until the consequences came due. Don't kill him, she said. Why not? Because he's not the one pulling the strings. He's a tool, like the assassin, like the forged signature. Find who gave him the orders, who offered him the deal. They're the real threat. Adrian studied her. You're asking me to show mercy to someone who helped orchestrate my murder. I'm asking you to be smart. Dead men don't talk. Scared men talk forever. A slow smile. You're good at this. I've had practice. With the Meridian case? And others. Lena looked away. Turns out dismantling criminal conspiracies is a transferable skill. Lucky me. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, expression darkening. Marcus found Michael Caruso. He's in the wind, fled the city 3 hours ago. Destination? Unknown, but he left a trail. Adrian showed her the message. Cash withdrawals from multiple ATMs, burner phone purchases, a one-way train ticket purchased under a fake name. Someone taught him how to run. Someone who knew he'd need to. Exactly. Adrian pocketed the phone. Which means we're not dealing with opportunists. We're dealing with professionals who've been planning this for months. Lena's mind raced. The symbol. The one Yuki Tanaka saw. We need to find out what it means. Who uses it? That's the key. I have someone working on it. Who? Someone who owes me a favor. Adrian's smile was sharp. And who's very motivated to keep breathing. The favor came through at midnight. Lena was in Adrian's office, surrounded by financial records and lukewarm coffee, when the email arrived. Adrian opened it without ceremony, then turned the laptop so she could see. A single document, encrypted, decoded, stamped with a header that read, Classified, Eyes Only. What is this? Lena asked. Information that cost me a very expensive favor. Adrian scrolled down. The symbol you recognized. It belongs to an organization called the Syndicate. Creative. Accurate. He pulled up an organizational chart. They're not exactly a crime family, more like a service provider. Highly trained operatives, each one a specialist. Assassins, hackers, blackmailers, fixers. They contract out to the highest bidder, no questions asked. Mercenaries. with a code. They don't accept just any contract. The client has to be vetted. The target has to be verified. They operate in the shadows, maintain absolute secrecy, and they're very, very expensive. Lena studied the document, which means whoever hired them has serious money and serious motivation. Or both. Adrian highlighted a section. The syndicate operates on a cell structure. Operatives don't know each other, don't communicate directly. Everything goes through handlers who report to a central council. The symbol, the one Yuki had, is how operatives identify their handlers. So the man who gave her the target package was her handler, which means he knows who hired the hit. Can we find him? We can try. Adrian closed the laptop. But here's the problem. The syndicate doesn't leave witnesses. If we go after the handler, they'll know. And then they won't send one assassin. They'll send 10. So we're back to square one. Not quite. Adrian pulled up another screen. Michael Caruso bought that train ticket to Philadelphia. Why Philadelphia? Running to someone he knows? Or someone who told him to run there? Adrian's fingers flew across the keyboard. I had Marcus pull Michael's phone records. In the last month, he received 3 calls from the same burner number, all from Philadelphia. His handler, maybe, or whoever recruited him. Adrian looked at her. How do you feel about a road trip? Lena should have said no. Should have stayed in the fortress, behind bulletproof glass and armed guards. Should have let Adrian handle this without her. But Elena Hartwell had spent 3 years hiding, and Lena Hart was tired of being afraid. When do we leave? Adrian's smile was pure wolf. Dawn. Pack light. They left as the sun painted Manhattan gold. The car was different from Adrian's usual convoy. An unmarked sedan, no escorts, no fanfare. Just the 2 of them and a driver named Carlo who spoke maybe 3 words the entire trip. Won't Marcus object to you leaving without security? Lena asked as they crossed into New Jersey. Marcus objects to everything. Adrian was on his laptop, working even as the city receded behind them. But he knows when I've made up my mind. And you've made up your mind about Philadelphia. I've made up my mind about ending this. He closed the laptop. Someone tried to kill me 3 times, used my own organization against me, turned a good man's son into a weapon. That doesn't end until I cut off the head. And if the syndicate sends more operatives, then I'll deal with them too. He looked at her. You don't have to come. This isn't your fight. You made it my fight when you wouldn't let me leave. I'm letting you now. Adrian's expression softened. Say the word, Lena. Carlo can drop you anywhere you want. New identity, new city, enough money to start over. You can disappear again. The offer hung between them, genuine and tempting. 3 years ago, Elena Hartwell would have taken it, would have run without looking back, grateful for the escape. But Lena Hart had tasted something she'd forgotten. Purpose. I'm seeing this through, she said. Why? Because someone needs to make sure you don't get killed by your own recklessness. Adrian laughed, genuine and surprised. That's your reason? That's my reason. You're either very brave or very stupid. Why not both? They drove in comfortable silence after that, Manhattan shrinking to memory, Philadelphia rising on the horizon like a promise or a threat. Either way, Lena was ready. End of part 1. Philadelphia greeted them with rain. Not the romantic kind that cleaned streets and made neon signs glow. This was cold, angry rain that turned the city gray and hostile. Carlo navigated through afternoon traffic with the same silent efficiency he'd maintained since New Jersey, while Adrian made calls in rapid succession, building a network of information around Michael Caruso's last known location. Lena watched the city scroll past her window. She'd been to Philadelphia once before, in her previous life, presenting quarterly projections to investors who'd later lost everything in the Meridian collapse. The memory tasted bitter. Hotel or safe house? Adrian asked, ending another call. What's the difference? Hotels have room service. Safe houses have weapons caches and escape routes. Safe house, then. Adrian's lips quirked. Smart woman. The safe house turned out to be a renovated brownstone in a neighborhood that had seen better decades. Brick facade, iron railings, windows that looked original but probably weren't. Carlo parked 2 blocks away, scanning the street before opening Adrian's door. Clear, he said, the first word Lena had heard from him in 3 hours. Inside, the safe house revealed its true nature. The charming exterior gave way to reinforced walls, security monitors, and enough surveillance equipment to run a small intelligence operation. A woman waited in what passed for a living room, late 30s, athletic build, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Mr. Cade," she said without warmth, "I have what you requested." "Excellent." Adrian didn't introduce Lena, which seemed intentional. "Show me." The woman, no name offered, pulled up a laptop displaying street camera footage. Michael Caruso arrived in Philadelphia 18 hours ago. Trained from New York, took a cab to the Temple University area, disappeared into an apartment complex on North Broad. Current location? Still there as of 40 minutes ago. 3rd floor, apartment 3C. One entrance, fire escape access. Neighbors are mostly students who mind their own business. Security? Standard residential. Nothing sophisticated. Adrian studied the footage. Who's he meeting? Unknown. But someone's been visiting that apartment regularly for the past month. Different people, different times, always cash transactions in the lobby. Classic dead drop behavior. Lena moved closer to the screen. "Can you pull up the visitors?" The woman's eyes flicked to Adrian, who nodded permission. She pulled up a series of images, faces captured by the building's lobby camera. Young, old, male, female. No pattern except professionalism. They moved like people who knew cameras existed and didn't care. "Syndicate," Lena said quietly. "You know them?" The woman's voice sharpened with interest. "I know their signature." Lena pointed to one image, a man in his 40s with a birthmark on his left cheek. "Zoom in on his wrist." The woman complied. There, barely visible beneath his sleeve, was the symbol. Circle bisected by a line, 3 smaller circles beneath. "Handler," Adrian confirmed. "So Michael's being managed by the syndicate directly. They're not just using him, they're protecting their investment." "Which means extracting him won't be simple," the woman said. "Nothing worth doing is simple." Adrian closed the laptop. "Extraction plan?" "Front door's too exposed. Fire escape gives you access to the 3rd floor, but the window's locked and probably alarmed. Best option is to wait until he leaves and grab him on the street." "Too public. Too many variables." Adrian turned to Lena. "Thoughts?" She hadn't expected to be consulted. In Adrian's world, she was still the outsider, the anomaly whose skills were useful but whose loyalties remained unproven. But he was looking at her now with genuine curiosity, waiting for her input. "What's Michael's pattern?" Lena asked the woman. "Does he leave the apartment, get deliveries, make calls?" "Food delivery twice a day, Thai food from the same restaurant each time. Orders through an app, pays cash on delivery. So he's scared but not disciplined, still clinging to comfort routines." Lena thought it through. "When's the next delivery?" The woman checked her phone. 7:45 tonight, like clockwork." "Then that's our window. Intercept the delivery, send someone in wearing the restaurant uniform. Michael's expecting food. He'll open the door without checking." Adrian smiled. "Simple, elegant, risky." "You wanted him alive." "Alive means getting close without spooking him." "And if his syndicate handlers are watching?" "They won't be. They're professionals. They set up their asset and move on. Constant surveillance costs money and draws attention. They'll have check-in protocols, scheduled contacts, but they won't babysit." Lena met his gaze. "Trust me, I've done this before." The woman raised an eyebrow. "Who is she?" "Someone useful," Adrian said. "Make it happen. I want Michael Caruso in this room by 9 o'clock tonight." After the woman left to arrange details, Adrian and Lena sat in the safe house's kitchen, a surprisingly domestic space with outdated appliances and a table that wobbled on uneven legs. "Coffee?" Adrian asked, already moving to the machine. "You make your own coffee?" "Sometimes even crime lords have to fend for themselves." He measured grounds with practiced ease. "You were good in there. Tactical thinking, pattern recognition. Where'd you learn that?" "FBI training seminars. When I was building the Meridian case, they taught me how to think like the criminals I was hunting. And now you're hunting criminals again." "I'm helping you not get killed. There's a difference." "Is there?" Adrian poured 2 cups, slid one across to her. "Seems like you're right back where you started, taking down an organization from the inside, following money trails, exposing corruption. Only this time, you're working with the crime lord instead of against him." Lena wrapped her hands around the warm mug. When you put it that way, I sound insane. You sound like someone who can't help fixing broken systems, even when fixing them puts you in danger. He sat across from her, and in the soft kitchen light, he looked less like a crime boss and more like a tired man carrying weight he couldn't set down. I understand that. Better than you'd think. You think your organization is a broken system? I think every system is broken if you look close enough. Mine's just more honest about it. Adrian sipped his coffee. I don't pretend to be legitimate. I don't hide behind corporations or political donations or charity foundations. I do what I do, and people know exactly what they're getting. Violence, control, fear, protection, order, stability. He set down his cup. The people who work for me, who live in the territories I control, they're safer because I exist. The streets are cleaner because I regulate them. The violence is contained because I manage it. That's a rationalization. That's reality. No anger in his voice, just certainty. You think the alternative is peace? It's not. It's chaos. Competing gangs tearing each other apart. Civilians caught in the crossfire. No rules except survival. I provide structure. That matters. Lena studied him across the wobbling table. You actually believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what's the point? The honesty surprised her. Crime lords weren't supposed to be introspective. They were supposed to be monsters, simple, brutal, easy to categorize. But Adrian Cade was complicated in ways that made him dangerous and human at the same time. The point, Lena said carefully, is that you get to decide who you are. Monster or something else. Fear or respect. Violence or protection. She met his eyes. Right now, someone's trying to kill you because they see weakness. Prove them wrong. By not killing Michael Caruso? By being smarter than they expect. Adrian's smile was slow and genuine. You're wasted as a waitress, Lena Hart. Elena Hartwell was wasted too. Look how that turned out. Fair point. They drank their coffee in comfortable silence. Two people from different worlds finding common ground in a safe house kitchen while rain hammered the windows, and somewhere across the city, Michael Caruso waited for Thai food that would never arrive. The extraction went exactly as planned, which should have been Lena's first warning. At 7:43, a woman in a Thai restaurant uniform knocked on apartment 3C carrying 2 bags of food that smelled authentically delicious. Michael Caruso opened the door without checking the peephole, already reaching for his wallet. The woman smiled, pulled a syringe from her pocket, and jabbed it into his neck before he could process what was happening. He went down hard. 2 men materialized from the stairwell, caught him before he hit the floor, and had him zip-tied and hooded in under 15 seconds. The woman left the food bags in the apartment, waste not, want not, and closed the door gently behind her. Professional, efficient, invisible. By 8:30, Michael Caruso was zip-tied to a chair in the safe house basement, coming around from whatever the woman had dosed him with. Adrian watched from the shadows while Lena stood near the stairs, arms crossed, trying to look less disturbed than she felt. This was the second basement interrogation she'd witnessed in a week. It wasn't getting easier. Where am I? Michael's voice was thick, panicked. What do you want? Adrian stepped into the light. Hello, Michael. We need to talk about your father. Recognition dawned, followed immediately by terror. Oh, God. Please, I had no choice. Everyone has choices. Adrian pulled up a chair, sitting just out of Michael's reach. You chose to help people who wanted me dead. You chose to betray your father's trust. You chose to run instead of face consequences. Now you get to choose how this ends. They'll kill me. If I talk, they'll kill me. If you don't talk, I'll kill you. Pick your odds. Michael started crying, ugly, desperate sobs that echoed off concrete walls. Lena looked away, fighting the urge to intervene. This wasn't her interrogation, wasn't her call. But watching a young man break was harder than she'd expected. Michael, she said quietly, moving closer, we know about the gambling debts. We know you were desperate. We know someone offered you a way out. They said it would be easy, Michael choked out. Just plant a device in my dad's office. One time, quick money, debts forgiven. They didn't tell me. I didn't know they were going to. Kill me? Adrian's voice was ice. Use your father's credentials to fund an assassination? Turn a good man into an unwitting accomplice? I didn't know. Michael lifted his head, face wet with tears and snot. I swear they just said it was surveillance, corporate espionage. I thought it was just business. Who approached you? I don't know his name. He found me at the casino, said he could help with my debts, gave me a card, told me to call if I was interested. What did the card look like? Black, no name, just a phone number. Adrian glanced at Lena. She nodded. Classic syndicate recruitment. Anonymous contact, deniability at every stage. When you called the number, who answered? Lena asked. A woman. She explained the job, the payment terms, said someone would contact me with details. And someone did. Michael nodded miserably. A man. Met me in a parking garage, gave me the device, showed me how to install it. Said once it was done, my debts would disappear. Did you see his face? He wore a mask, but he had a tattoo on his wrist, a circle with lines and dots. I remember because it was weird, really precise, like it meant something. The symbol, again. What happened after you installed the device? Adrian's tone had shifted, less threatening, more analytical. He sensed they were close to something. Nothing at first. Then a week later, the woman called again, said there was a problem, that I'd been identified, that I needed to leave the city immediately. She gave me instructions, where to go, how to travel, where to hide. Said someone would contact me here with next steps. Has anyone contacted you? Not yet. I've been waiting. Michael stopped, realization dawning. That's why you're here. You knew they'd send me to Philadelphia. We followed the breadcrumbs you left, Lena said. You weren't exactly subtle. Because I'm not a criminal. The outburst was raw, desperate. I didn't want any of this. I just wanted the debts to go away. I wanted my life back. Your life, Adrian said quietly, required my death. Do you understand that? Every choice you made, every action you took, was part of a machine designed to kill me. And you were too selfish or too stupid to see it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't resurrect the dead. Adrian stood. But lucky for you, I'm not dead, which means you get to be useful instead of buried. Michael's eyes went wide. What do you want? I want the woman who called you, the man who recruited you, the entire chain that leads back to whoever's trying to destroy me. Adrian leaned down, close enough that Michael flinched. You're going to help me find them, and in exchange, you get to live. I told you everything I know. Then you'll tell them we never found you. You'll play your role, attend your meetings, follow their instructions, and you'll report everything back to us. They'll know. They'll figure out I flipped. Not if you're smart. Adrian straightened. You managed to fool your father for months. Time to put that talent to better use. After Adrian left to make calls, Lena stayed in the basement with Michael. The young man sagged in his chair, defeated and terrified in equal measure. He's going to kill me anyway, Michael said dully, whether I help or not. Maybe. Lena sat where Adrian had been. Or maybe you get to live with what you've done and spend the rest of your life trying to earn back the trust you destroyed. Either way, you're alive. That's more than a lot of people get. You work for him. I'm helping him not die. There's a difference. You seem too... Michael searched for words. Too normal to be part of this world. I used to think that too. Lena smiled without humor. Turns out normal is relative. 6 months ago, I was serving noodles. Now I'm in a basement in Philadelphia convincing a criminal to betray the people who recruited him. Life's funny that way. Why are you doing this? Because someone has to. She stood, moving to the stairs. Get some rest, Michael. Tomorrow, you start earning your survival. Upstairs, Adrian was on his third phone call, pacing the kitchen with restless energy. Lena made fresh coffee. The old pot had gone cold and waited. Understood, Adrian said into the phone. Keep watching the apartment. If anyone comes looking for him, I want to know immediately. He ended the call, scrubbed a hand over his face. The syndicate will notice Michael missed his check-in. They'll send someone to investigate. Good, Lena said. Let them come. You want them to find us? I want them to find the apartment empty and draw their own conclusions. Either Michael ran or he's compromised. Either way, they'll make a move. And when they do, we'll be watching. Adrian accepted the coffee she offered. You're thinking like a tactician. I'm thinking like someone who's tired of being hunted. Lena sat at the wobbling table. Every move we've made has been reactive. Defense, extraction, survival. Time to go on offense. Offense means exposing ourselves. We're already exposed. Someone inside your organization is working with the syndicate. Someone with access, resources, and motivation to destroy you from the inside. Hiding won't find them, but bait will. Adrian's eyes narrowed. What kind of bait? Me. The word hung between them, heavy with implication. Think about it. I'm the unknown variable. I've saved your life twice, uncovered the conspiracy, found Michael Caruso. Whoever's orchestrating this has to be curious about who I am and what I know. So you want to make yourself a target. I want to make myself interesting. There's a difference. Lena leaned forward. We leak information that I'm the one who found the financial trail, who connected Michael to the syndicate. We make it seem like I'm the threat to their operation. They'll come for me, and when they do, we'll be waiting. Adrian sat back, processing. It's dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. You could die. I could die crossing the street. Lena met his gaze. But I'd rather die fighting than hiding. I've done enough hiding. Something in Adrian's expression shifted, respect mixing with concern in a way that felt uncomfortably personal. Elena Hartwell really is dead, isn't she? And Lena Hart is someone who doesn't run anymore. Lena Hart is someone who's tired of being afraid. Fear keeps people alive. Fear kept me invisible for 3 years, but it didn't make me alive. It made me a ghost. She finished her coffee in one swallow. I'm done being a ghost. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Then he nodded, decision made. We'll need to control the leak carefully. Make it believable, but not obvious. Someone inside my organization is the traitor. They need to think they're discovering information, not receiving it. How do we do that? By being careless. Adrian pulled out his phone. I make calls where certain people can overhear. You're seen reviewing files, asking questions. We create a trail that leads anyone paying attention straight to you. And then? Then we wait for them to bite. The plan took shape over the next 12 hours. Adrian made carefully calculated mistakes, discussing Lena's findings on supposedly secure phone lines, leaving documents visible during video calls, mentioning her name in contexts where loyal employees and potential traitors alike would hear it. Each breadcrumb was designed to paint Lena as the key to unraveling the conspiracy. Meanwhile, Lena played her part. She was visible at the safe house, reviewing files in front of windows, speaking with Adrian in outdoor locations where surveillance could catch audio. She became the narrative, the financial expert who'd connected dots no one else could see, the outsider who'd infiltrated Adrian's inner circle and discovered too much. The performance felt uncomfortably familiar. During the Meridian case, she'd done the same thing, built a profile, made herself valuable, became the person criminals needed to eliminate. The FBI had protected her then, had promised her safety in exchange for her testimony. They'd failed. The man she'd testified against had been murdered before trial, and she'd barely escaped with her life. This time, the only protection she had was Adrian Cade and his network of violent, loyal criminals. It should have felt less safe. Somehow, it didn't. On the second night, the response came. Lena was alone in the safe house. Adrian had left for a meeting with his Philadelphia contacts, taking Carlo and leaving 2 guards outside. She sat at the kitchen table reviewing financial records, the kind of boring, methodical work that had once defined her life. The window shattered inward with brutal efficiency. Glass exploded across the kitchen, and Lena dove sideways on pure instinct, hitting the floor hard as bullets punched through the wall where her head had been. Professional, suppressed, multiple shooters. The guards outside shouted, then went silent. Not a good sign. Lena scrambled toward the hallway, staying low, adrenaline screaming through her veins. The safe house was supposed to be safe. Bulletproof glass, reinforced doors, panic rooms. But the shooters had come through anyway, which meant they'd known exactly which defenses to breach. Someone had given them the blueprints. She made it to the panic room, a reinforced closet with a steel door and a direct line to Adrian's security team, slammed the door shut, threw the bolt, and grabbed the phone. Panic room activated, she said when someone answered. Multiple shooters, guards down. I'm secure but trapped. Location? Philadelphia safe house. Send. The door exploded. Not with bullets, with something worse. Shaped charges. Precision explosives that turned reinforced steel into shrapnel. The blast threw Lena backward, her ears ringing, vision swimming. Through the smoke, a figure emerged. Tactical gear, night vision, moving with lethal efficiency. Not an assassin this time. An extractor. They wanted her alive. Lena kicked out desperately, catching the figure in the knee. They grunted but didn't go down, instead grabbing her arm with crushing force. She twisted, using techniques half-remembered from FBI self-defense training, but they were stronger, better trained. A needle flashed in the dim light. Not again. She'd been sedated during the Meridian collapse, woken up zip-tied in a warehouse with men who'd planned to make her disappear permanently. She'd escaped then through luck and desperation. Lightning didn't strike twice. The needle bit into her neck and the world tilted sideways. Lena tried to fight, tried to scream, but her muscles turned to water and her vision to static. The last thing she saw was the extractor's wrist, tattoo visible beneath their glove. Circle bisected by a line. 3 smaller circles beneath. The syndicate had her. She woke in darkness. Not complete darkness. There was a thin line of light beneath what might be a door, casting just enough illumination to reveal concrete walls, no windows, and her own hand zip-tied in front of her. Professional restraints, the kind that tightened if you struggled. Lena stayed still, taking inventory. No injuries beyond bruising, clothes intact. Nothing missing except her phone and the small knife she'd started carrying in her pocket, the one Adrian had given her after the first assassination attempt. The room smelled of mildew and old cigarettes. Somewhere above, footsteps crossed back and forth with irregular rhythm. Multiple people, multiple voices, too muffled to make out words. She was in a basement. Again. But this time, she wasn't the interrogator. The door opened, flooding the room with harsh fluorescent light. Lena squinted against the sudden brightness as 2 figures entered, one tall and lean, one shorter and compact. Both wore the same tactical gear from the extraction. "She's awake," the tall one said. Male voice, East Coast accent, probably New York. "Good." The shorter one crouched in front of Lena, pulling off their mask to reveal a woman in her 40s with a scar bisecting her left eyebrow. "Lena Hart, you've been busy. You have me confused with someone else." "Do we?" The woman smiled without warmth. Former financial analyst, current waitress, amateur detective who dismantled a criminal empire once and thought she could do it again. "We know exactly who you are." Ice flooded Lena's veins. They knew. Somehow, they'd connected Lena Hart to Elena Hartwell, despite 3 years of careful erasure. "I'm nobody," Lena said carefully. "Wrong place, wrong time." "Wrong answer." The woman produced a tablet, pulled up a photo. Young Lena, Elena, in a business suit, testifying before Congress during the Meridian hearings. Elena Hartwell, youngest chief financial analyst in Meridian's history. The woman who took down a $2 billion Ponzi scheme and put 14 people in prison. The woman who supposedly died in a car accident 3 years ago. "That's not me." Facial recognition says otherwise. Dental records, gait analysis, fingerprints. The woman swiped through images. Comparisons, data points, evidence. "You're very good at hiding, Elena. Almost perfect. But there's no such thing as perfect." Lena's mind raced. If they had this much information, they could destroy her new identity with a single leak. Could expose her to the people who'd tried to kill her 3 years ago, the criminal networks who still had prices on Elena Hartwell's head. "What do you want?" she asked. "Information. You've been inside Adrian Cade's organization for a week. You found financial irregularities my client spent months concealing. We need to know what else you found and who you told. Your client. The person who hired us to eliminate Adrian Cade and anyone who might interfere with that objective." The woman leaned closer. "You interfered, Elena. Spectacularly. Now you get to explain how you connected dots our own forensic accountants missed. I'm good with numbers. You're good at staying alive. But that skill only works if you cooperate." The woman nodded to her partner, who produced a syringe filled with clear liquid. "This is sodium pentothal, truth serum.
We inject you, you tell us everything, and when we're done, we decide if you're more valuable alive or dead.
Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. Truth serum wasn't foolproof. People could resist, could lie even under its influence. But it lowered inhibitions, made deception harder, and she had too many secrets to risk even partial revelation. "Wait," she said. "I'll tell you what you want to know. No drugs." "Why should we trust you?" "Because I'm terrified and smart enough to know when I'm beaten. You want information? I'll give it to you, just no drugs, please." The woman studied her, calculating. Then she waved off her partner, who pocketed the syringe with obvious disappointment. "Talk," the woman said. "Start with how you found the shell company." Lena took a breath, steadying herself. She needed to give them something real, enough to satisfy their curiosity, while protecting the information that mattered. The art of the partial truth, perfected over 3 years of lying about who she was. "I noticed a pattern in the lease payments," she began. "Small discrepancy in the account numbers. I ran a trace, found the shell company, followed the money to the security firm." "That's in your written report. Tell me something we don't know." "The timing. Whoever set up the shell company knew Adrian's fiscal calendar. The account switch happened during quarterly reconciliation, the busiest time when small changes get overlooked in the noise. That requires inside knowledge." The woman's eyes sharpened. "Keep going." "The payments to Nightfall Solutions were structured to avoid detection. Small amounts, irregular intervals, coded as maintenance expenses. But the pattern matched Syndicate's standard operating procedure. I've seen it before in other cases." "What other cases?" "Careful. Don't reveal too much. Corporate espionage investigations, financial fraud. I worked in risk management. We saw these patterns when companies were being targeted for hostile takeovers." Not quite a lie. Elena Hartwell had seen similar patterns during the Meridian investigation. "And you recognized them in Adrian's organization." "I recognized the signature, the methodology. Professional criminals operate like corporations. They have procedures, hierarchies, documentation. Follow the money, you find the structure." The woman sat back, processing. "You found all this in 3 days." "I had motivation. Someone tried to kill Adrian while I was standing next to him. That makes it personal." "Why do you care if Adrian Cade lives or dies? You barely know him." "Because he could have let me walk away, and he didn't. Because someone's using innocent people as weapons, and that's wrong. Because," Lena met the woman's gaze, "because I've already watched one empire collapse into violence, and I'm tired of seeing good people get destroyed by other people's greed." Something flickered in the woman's expression. Not sympathy, professionals like her didn't do sympathy, but perhaps recognition. Understanding from one person who'd seen too much to another. "The shell company," the woman said. "Who else knows about it?" "Adrian, his head of security, maybe 3 other people in his inner circle." "Did you document your findings?" "Printed reports, digital files, standard analysis package." "Where?" "Adrian's office. The safe house in Manhattan, probably backed up on his secure servers." The woman turned to her partner. "Confirm. I want those files located and destroyed within the hour." As the partner left to make calls, the woman returned her attention to Lena. "You're good at this. Too good to be wasting your talent serving noodles or playing detective for a crime lord. I had a different career path in mind. Didn't work out. Because you testified against people who could have made you rich instead of dead. Because I did the right thing." Lena's voice hardened. "Even when it cost me everything." "The right thing?" The woman laughed bitterly. "You sound like someone who still believes in justice." "I sound like someone who's seen what happens when powerful people face no consequences. It doesn't end well for anyone." "Is that what you think you're doing with Adrian Cade? Delivering justice?" "I think I'm keeping a complicated man alive long enough to figure out who's trying to kill him and why. What happens after that isn't my problem." The woman stood, pacing the small room. "My client wants Adrian dead because he's an obstacle. A relic of old systems refusing to evolve. The city's changing, power structures are shifting, and Adrian Cade won't adapt." "So your client kills him and takes over?" "So the city gets new leadership, more efficient, more profitable, less sentimental." "And the people who work for Adrian? The neighborhoods he protects? The stability he provides?" Collateral damage in a necessary transition.
The woman shrugged. This is business, Elena. Nothing personal. It's always personal, Lena said quietly. That's what people like you never understand. Every decision, every death, every betrayal, it's personal to someone. And eventually, all that personal pain comes back to destroy you. The woman studied her for a long moment. You really believe that? I've lived it. And yet here you are, alive, successful at disappearing. You could have stayed invisible, Lena.
Could have served noodles for the rest of your life and never worried about people like me finding you. Why didn't you? The question cut deeper than intended. Why hadn't she? 3 years of careful invisibility thrown away for a man she'd known less than a week. 3 years of safety, destroyed by a split-second decision to pull Adrian into a kiss and save his life. Because invisibility isn't the same as being alive, Lena said finally, and I was tired of being a ghost. The woman's phone buzzed. She checked it, frowned, typed a response. Your information checks out. The files are where you said they'd be, and my client is satisfied with your explanation. So I'm free to go? No. The woman pocketed her phone. But you're free to live, for now. My client has a proposition. I'm listening. Walk away. Disappear again. We'll provide new identity documents, money, placement in a city of your choice. All you have to do is leave Philadelphia, leave Adrian Cade, and forget everything you've seen. It was a good offer. Generous, even. A clean exit from a situation spiraling toward violence. And Lena would have taken it 3 years ago when Elena Hartwell was still running, still terrified, still convinced that survival meant isolation. But Lena Hart was tired of running. And if I refuse, she asked, then my client will be forced to eliminate you as a threat, professional, permanent, no second chances. So it's exile or execution. It's survival or stubbornness. Choose wisely. Lena looked at the zip ties binding her wrists, at the concrete walls that had become horrifyingly familiar, at the woman who spoke of murder like it was a spreadsheet calculation. I need to think about it, she said. You have 1 hour. The woman moved to the door. Use it wisely, Elena. This is the best offer you're going to get. After she left, Lena sat alone in the darkness, listening to footsteps above and the rhythmic drip of water somewhere in the walls. 1 hour to decide between invisibility and death. Except there was a third option. Lena worked at the zip ties with methodical patience, using the edge of a protruding nail she'd spotted on the wall behind her. The plastic was strong, but not indestructible. Friction and pressure, applied correctly, would eventually weaken the bond. It took 40 minutes of careful sawing before the ties snapped. Her wrists were raw and bleeding, but her hands were free. Lena stood slowly, testing her balance. The sedative had mostly worn off, leaving her shaky but functional. She moved to the door, pressed her ear against it. Voices. Still multiple people, but farther away than before. They weren't expecting her to escape. The room was secure, the restraints were professional, but they hadn't searched her thoroughly enough. Lena reached into the lining of her jacket, the one place the extractors hadn't checked, and withdrew a small, flexible pick she'd sewn into the seam days ago. Old habits from her FBI training, back when they'd taught her how to escape bad situations. The lock was standard commercial grade. 30 seconds of careful manipulation, and the bolt slid free. Lena eased the door open, wincing as it creaked. The corridor beyond was empty. Concrete and fluorescent lights. Industrial chic that screamed warehouse conversion. Voices came from upstairs, along with the faint smell of coffee and cigarettes. She moved in the opposite direction, staying low, following the corridor to a fire exit that should lead outside. Should being the operative word. The exit was alarmed, a silent trigger that would alert everyone upstairs the moment she pushed through. But staying meant accepting exile or execution. Lena took a breath, whispered a prayer to whatever watched over foolish women making desperate choices, and slammed through the exit. Alarms screamed, shouts erupted from upstairs. Footsteps thundered in pursuit, but Lena was already running. The warehouse opened onto an industrial park, abandoned factories, rusted equipment, broken pavement. Philadelphia's forgotten edges, where nobody looked too closely and nobody called the police. Perfect for criminal operations, terrible for escape routes. Lena sprinted toward the street, her breath ragged, the wound on her wrists leaving a trail of blood she couldn't hide. Behind her, the syndicate operatives burst from the warehouse, weapons drawn, professional and furious. She wasn't going to make it. Wasn't fast enough, wasn't armed, wasn't prepared for a firefight against trained killers. Then headlights flooded the street, and a familiar black sedan screeched to a stop between Lena and her pursuers. Adrian stepped out, gun in hand, Marcus beside him with a rifle that looked military grade. "Get in!" Adrian shouted. Lena didn't argue. She dove into the back seat as bullets sparked off the sedan's armored plating. Adrian and Marcus returned fire with brutal efficiency, not to kill, but to suppress. Cover fire while Carlo threw the car into reverse and executed a turn that would have impressed a stunt driver. Then they were gone, tearing through the industrial park while the syndicate operatives regrouped behind them. "Are you hit?" Adrian demanded, twisting in his seat to look at Lena. "No, just, how did you find me? Tracker in your jacket lining." He held up a phone showing a blinking dot. "I told you I'd protect you. Did you think I was bluffing?" Lena laughed, high and slightly hysterical. "You put a tracker on me." "I put trackers on everyone I care about staying alive." Adrian's expression was grim. "What happened?" "They knew. About Elena Hartwell. About Meridian. Everything." Lena's hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. "They wanted information about what I found in your organization, offered me exile or death if I didn't cooperate. And you chose option 3. I chose not to die in a basement." Lena met his eyes. "Your organization has a leak. Whoever hired the syndicate knows your security protocols, your safe house locations, your financial structures. They're not just trying to kill you, they're trying to dismantle everything you've built." "I know." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Marcus found the source while you were gone. One of my oldest friends. 20 years of loyalty, destroyed by a better offer." "Who?" "Later. Right now we need to get you somewhere actually safe." "Is anywhere safe?" Adrian's smile was sharp and dangerous. "Not anymore. But that works in our favor." "How?" "Because if nowhere is safe," he said, "then everywhere is a battlefield. And I'm very good at winning wars. The safe house this time wasn't in Philadelphia. It wasn't even in Pennsylvania. Carlo drove through the night, crossing state lines with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before, while Lena sat in the back seat with her wrists bandaged and her mind racing. Adrian made calls in low, clipped tones, mobilizing resources, calling in favors, building a defensive perimeter around what remained of his trust. They ended up in rural Maryland in a farmhouse that looked like it belonged in a painting of American pastoral life. White clapboard, wraparound porch, fields stretching to a tree line that seemed impossibly far away, the kind of place where neighbors waved and minded their business. "This is yours?" Lena asked as they pulled up the gravel drive. "Belonged to my mother," Adrian said, stepping out into pre-dawn darkness. "She bought it 30 years ago, kept it in her maiden name. Nobody in my organization knows it exists. Except Marcus. Except Marcus." Adrian waited while the head of security swept the property, checking doors and windows with professional paranoia. "If I can't trust Marcus, I can't trust anyone. And if I can't trust anyone, I'm already dead." The logic was sound but terrifying in its simplicity. Inside, the farmhouse was frozen in time. Furniture from the 80s, wallpaper with tiny flowers, a kitchen that smelled faintly of lemon polish and old wood. Someone had maintained it carefully, kept it clean and ready, as if Adrian's mother might walk through the door at any moment. "She died 5 years ago," Adrian said, catching Lena's expression. "Cancer. I keep the place exactly how she left it. Reminds me that not everything has to be cold and strategic." "But did she know?" Lena asked quietly. "About what you do?" "She knew I wasn't running a charity." Adrian moved to the kitchen, filling a kettle with practiced ease. "But she never asked questions, said everyone's got to make their own choices and live with the consequences. She lived with hers. I live with mine." Marcus entered without knocking, tablet in hand, expression grim. "Perimeter secure, motion sensors active. We're off-grid as far as electronic surveillance goes." He set the tablet on the kitchen table. "But we need to talk about the leak." "Who?" Lena asked, though part of her already knew the answer from the weight in Marcus's voice. "Tommy Breslin." Adrian said the name like it tasted wrong. 20 years he's worked for me. Saved my life twice. I trusted him with everything." "What turned him?" "Money. Always money. Marcus pulled up financial records on the tablet. The syndicate offered him $5 million to facilitate your death, provide safe house locations, security protocols, daily schedules. He's been feeding them information for 3 months. Lena studied the evidence: wire transfers, encrypted communications, a paper trail that painted a portrait of betrayal. Tommy Breslin, the broad-shouldered man with the Brooklyn accent who'd questioned her presence in the war room, had been selling Adrian piece by piece. "How did you catch him?" she asked. "He got sloppy," Marcus said. "After you were taken, I started running financial audits on everyone with access to the Philadelphia safe house. Tommy's offshore accounts lit up like Christmas. He tried to hide it with shell companies and delayed transfers, but the pattern was there. Where is he now?" "Somewhere he can't run and can't warn anyone." Adrian's voice was ice. "I'll deal with him after we handle the bigger problem." "Which is?" "Whoever hired Tommy, whoever's paying the syndicate, whoever wants me dead badly enough to spend $5 million on a single operative." Adrian met Lena's eyes. "You said they offered you exile or execution. Did they mention their client?" "Only that the client wants you dead because you're an obstacle to new leadership, someone trying to modernize the city's power structures." "That narrows it down to about 15 people," Marcus muttered. "No." Lena shook her head. "It's someone with resources and patience. Someone who's been planning this for months, maybe longer. They're not impulsive, they're methodical. Building infrastructure, recruiting assets, eliminating resistance." "A hostile takeover," Adrian said. "Exactly. Corporate strategy applied to criminal enterprise." Lena pulled the tablet toward her, scrolling through Tommy's financials. "These payments, they follow a specific schedule. Monthly retainers, bonus payments tied to deliverables. This is how you manage contractors, not how you pay for one-off services." Marcus leaned over her shoulder. So Tommy wasn't just selling information about the hit on Adrian. He was selling everything. Territory maps, supply chains, protection rackets, political connections, anything that would help someone else step into Adrian's shoes after he's gone. Lena highlighted several transactions. "Look at the timing. The first payment to Tommy was 6 months ago. Right around the time—" She stopped, realization hitting like cold water. "What?" Adrian demanded. 6 months ago. That's when you restructured your eastern territories, consolidated power, eliminated redundancy, streamlined operations." Lena looked up at him. "You made yourself more efficient, and in doing so, you made yourself more vulnerable." "I made smart business decisions." "You created a centralized power structure with a single point of failure." Lena turned the tablet to show him. "Before the restructuring, your organization was distributed. Multiple lieutenants, overlapping territories, built-in redundancy. If one person died, the others could compensate. But after restructuring, everything flows through you. You're not just the boss, you're the linchpin. Remove you, and the entire structure collapses." Adrian's expression darkened. "Making it easier for someone to take over. Making it inevitable. Whoever's orchestrating this knew the restructuring would create an opportunity. They waited for you to centralize, then they moved." Lena pulled up more data. "The assassination attempt started 3 months after restructuring. The shell company was established 2 months after that. This isn't opportunistic. This is strategic." "Who knew about the restructuring before it happened?" Marcus asked. "My inner circle. You, Tommy, Vincent, a few others." Adrian's jaw tightened. "And my brother." The name hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. "Elias," Marcus said quietly. "Elias." Adrian moved to the window, staring out at fields slowly emerging from darkness. "He's been pushing me to expand into digital operations, cryptocurrency, dark web marketplaces, cyber infrastructure. Said the future of organized crime is technology, not territory." "And you disagreed," Lena said. "I told him we succeed because we control physical space, real estate, shipping routes, supply chains. Digital operations are too traceable, too vulnerable to law enforcement. We argued about it for months." "How did he react when you restructured without incorporating his suggestions?" Adrian's silence was answer enough. Marcus pulled up a new file on the tablet. Elias Cade, 32 years old, Harvard Business School, worked in venture capital before joining the family business 5 years ago. Officially, he runs your legitimate operations, real estate holdings, investment portfolios, corporate acquisitions. Unofficially? Lena asked. Unofficially, he's been building parallel infrastructure, tech startups, consulting firms, offshore investment funds, all legitimate on the surface, all perfectly positioned to support criminal operations if needed. He's building his own empire, Lena said. He's building the empire he thinks should exist. Adrian turned from the window.
Elias believes I'm his dinosaur. Old school, resistant to change, holding back progress. He's probably right. That doesn't give him the right to kill you, doesn't it? Adrian's smile was bitter. In our world, succession is rarely peaceful. I took over when my father died. My father took over when his predecessor was murdered. This is how power transfers, violently. So you're just going to accept it. I'm going to end it. The temperature in the room dropped. But first I need proof. Elias is family. I can't move against him on suspicion alone. The syndicate woman mentioned a client, Lena said. Someone paying for the operation. If we can connect those payments to Elias, we'll have our proof. Marcus was already typing. I'll start tracing the syndicate's funding sources, cross-reference with Elias's known accounts and shell companies. Do it quietly, Adrian said. If Elias suspects we're onto him, he'll accelerate his timeline. And I'd rather not have a war break out before I'm ready. The kettle whistled. Adrian poured tea with movements that seemed almost meditative, the domestic action at odds with the violence they were planning. He handed Lena a cup without asking if she wanted it. You should rest, he said. You've been kidnapped, interrogated, and escaped execution in the last 12 hours. Sleep would be a good idea. I'm fine. You're running on adrenaline and stubbornness. Eventually, both will fail you. Adrian's voice softened. There's a bedroom upstairs, second door on the left. It was my mother's sewing room, but there's a bed. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to keep working, wanted to prove she was useful and necessary and worth the protection Adrian was providing. But exhaustion was creeping in at the edges, making her thoughts sluggish and her hands shake. Wake me if something happens, she said. I will. She made it to the stairs before turning back. Adrian? Yes? Why are you doing this, really? I'm nobody to you. A waitress who happened to save your life. You could have let the syndicate take me, could have used me as bait, could have traded me for information, but you tracked me down and risked exposure to get me back. Why? Adrian was quiet for a long moment, studying her across the kitchen that smelled of his dead mother's choices and his own complicated history. Because you're not nobody, he said finally. You're someone who saw danger and ran toward it instead of away. Someone who could have stayed invisible and chose to be visible. Someone who understands that doing the right thing doesn't always feel safe or smart or survivable. And people like that, his voice roughened, people like that are rare enough to be worth protecting. Lena's throat tightened. I'm not a hero, Adrian. Neither am I. But maybe together we can keep each other alive long enough to figure out what we are. She didn't have an answer to that, so she just nodded and climbed the stairs to a room that smelled of lavender and old fabric, where she collapsed into a bed that had probably hosted more innocent dreams than hers, and fell into sleep that was anything but peaceful. When Lena woke, the sun was high, and the farmhouse was quiet. Too quiet. She sat up, instantly alert, old instincts screaming that something was wrong. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was empty. The kind of empty that came after people left or died. Lena grabbed the small gun Adrian had insisted she carry, a compact 9mm that felt foreign in her hand, and moved downstairs with her back against the wall and her pulse hammering. The kitchen was empty. Coffee sat cold in the pot. 2 cups abandoned on the table. Marcus's tablet was gone. So was Adrian's phone. But there was a note, written in Adrian's precise handwriting. Went to handle Tommy, stay put, back by sunset. Don't do anything stupid. Lena read it twice, then crumpled it in her fist. Don't do anything stupid. Like Adrian Cade was one to talk about risk management. She was pouring fresh coffee when her own phone buzzed, the burner Adrian had given her after Philadelphia. Unknown number. She answered on the 4th ring. Lena Hart. The voice was male, cultured, with the faint trace of an accent she couldn't place. We should talk. Who is this? Someone with information about your situation. And a proposal that might interest you. I'm not interested in proposals from people who won't identify themselves. Fair enough. My name is Elias Cade.
I believe you've been working with my brother. Lena's blood turned to ice. I'm listening, she said carefully. Good, because what I'm about to tell you will save both our lives. Elias's voice was smooth, reasonable, the voice of someone who'd spent years in boardrooms convincing people to trust him. Adrian thinks I'm trying to kill him. That's incorrect. I'm trying to save him from himself. By hiring assassins? I haven't hired anyone. But someone is using my resources to frame me for Adrian's attempted murder. Someone who wants us both dead and our organization destroyed. Why should I believe you? Because you're smart enough to recognize when the evidence is too perfect. Elias paused. The shell companies Marcus found, they're mine, yes, but I didn't authorize the payments to the syndicate. Someone hacked my accounts, used my credentials, made it look like I was funding the operation. Convenient. Provable. I have forensic evidence showing the breach, time-stamped logs of unauthorized access, everything you'd need to verify my story. But I can't give it to Adrian. He won't listen. He's already decided I'm guilty. Can you blame him? No. Which is why I need your help. Elias's tone shifted, urgent now. Meet with me. Review the evidence. If you think I'm lying, walk away. But if I'm telling the truth, then we're both in danger from whoever's really orchestrating this. Lena moved to the window, scanning the fields for movement. How do I know this isn't a trap? You don't, but consider the alternative. If I wanted you dead, I could have told the syndicate where you are right now. This farmhouse isn't as secret as Adrian thinks. The threat was delivered casually, almost apologetically, but it landed like a punch. You're watching the farmhouse, Lena said. I'm protecting it. There's a difference. Elias sighed. Look, I know how this sounds. The guilty man claiming innocence, the brother betraying family, but I'm not my father, and I'm not the villain Adrian needs me to be. I'm just someone trying to survive a game I didn't start. Where do you want to meet? There's a diner 15 miles south. Small place, public, enough to be safe, private enough to talk. I'll be there in 2 hours. Come alone, come armed, come skeptical. But come. He ended the call before Lena could respond. She stood in the kitchen holding a dead phone and a loaded gun, trying to calculate the odds that Elias Cade was telling the truth. The smart move was to call Adrian, tell him about the contact, let him handle his brother. But Adrian was handling Tommy Breslin, which meant violence and interrogation, and the particular brutality of betrayal being answered with blood. And if Elias was innocent, if someone was framing him, then Adrian was about to make a mistake that would destroy what remained of his family. Lena looked at the note again. Don't do anything stupid. Then she grabbed her jacket and headed for the door. The diner was exactly as advertised, small, public, and thoroughly unremarkable. Lena arrived early, chose a booth with clear sight lines to both entrances, and ordered coffee she didn't drink. The lunch crowd was sparse. A few truck drivers, a family with restless kids, a woman reading a paperback novel. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that someone planning potential fratricide was about to walk through the door. Elias Cade arrived exactly on time. He looked like Adrian's opposite. Where Adrian was dark and sharp and controlled, Elias was lighter, softer, more approachable. Same gray eyes, but warmer. Same strong jawline, but gentler. He wore jeans and a casual button-down, the kind of outfit that said successful but relatable in a way Adrian's tailored suits never could. Lena. He slid into the booth across from her. Thank you for coming. I haven't decided if I'm staying. Fair. Elias ordered coffee from a passing waitress, then pulled a tablet from his bag. Let me show you what I have. The evidence was compelling. Forensic logs showing unauthorized access to Elias's financial accounts. Timestamps proving the transfers to Tommy Breslin happened while Elias was in meetings with verifiable alibis. Digital fingerprints that didn't match his security credentials. Someone cloned your access, Lena said, scrolling through the data. That's my assessment. Sophisticated work. They knew my patterns, my transaction schedules, even my security protocols. This wasn't a random hack. Someone studied me for months. Who has that level of access to your operations? That's the question I've been asking. Elias pulled up another file. I've narrowed it to 3 possibilities. All people with technical expertise, all with grievances against Adrian, all positioned to benefit if we destroy each other. The names meant nothing to Lena, but she memorized them anyway. Why not take this to Adrian yourself? Because he won't listen. My brother loves me, but he doesn't trust me. Hasn't for years. Elias's expression turned sad. I pushed too hard for modernization, questioned his methods too publicly. He thinks I'm trying to take over, and nothing I say will convince him otherwise. So you want me to convince him? I want you to investigate. You found the shell companies, connected Tommy to the syndicate, escaped kidnapping through pure skill. Adrian trusts your judgment. Elias met her eyes. If you tell him I'm innocent, he'll listen. If you tell him someone else is playing us both, he'll believe you. And if I investigate and find you're guilty, then I'll accept the consequences. Elias's voice was steady. I'm not afraid of my brother, Lena. I'm afraid of losing him. The sincerity felt real, but Lena had learned not to trust feelings. Elias Cade was a Harvard-educated businessman who'd spent years in venture capital. Sincerity was a tool, same as lies or threats. I'll look at your evidence, she said, but I'm not making promises. That's all I ask. Elias pushed the tablet toward her. Everything's there. Bank records, security logs, communication timestamps. Cross-reference it with whatever Marcus found. If the stories match, you'll know I'm telling the truth. And if they don't? Then Adrian was right about me, and you should run as far from this family as possible. Lena pocketed the tablet, but didn't stand. The syndicate woman who interrogated me, she said her client wants Adrian dead because he's blocking progress. That sounds like something you'd say. It is something I'd say. I've said it to Adrian's face a dozen times. Elias didn't flinch. But saying someone's an obstacle isn't the same as hiring killers. I want to change how our organization operates. I don't want my brother dead. People kill for less than power. People kill for power they think they deserve. I don't want Adrian's power. I want him to share it. There's a difference. Elias leaned forward. I know how this looks. Younger brother, ambitious, educated, pushing for change. Classic succession narrative. But I'm not Shakespearean villain, Lena. I'm just someone trying to drag a family business into the 21st century without destroying it in the process. Noble. Practical. Adrian's methods work, but they're not sustainable. The world's changing. Law enforcement is smarter, technology is better, old-school territory control is dying. If we don't adapt, someone else will, and they'll be less careful about collateral damage. Lena studied him across the diner table, trying to separate truth from manipulation. Elias Cade was smooth, articulate, reasonable in a way Adrian never quite managed. He made sense. His evidence looked legitimate. His motives seemed almost altruistic, which was exactly what made him dangerous. I'll review the evidence, she said again. But Elias? If you're lying, if any of this is a setup, I will make sure Adrian knows, and I won't feel guilty about it. I wouldn't expect you to. Elias stood, leaving cash on the table for the coffee. One more thing. The person framing me, they're good. Professional level encryption, expert level social engineering. This isn't some opportunistic rival. This is someone with resources and skills. Someone inside your organization. Or someone we haven't considered. Elias's expression turned grim. Adrian thinks in terms of territory and loyalty, but there are other kinds of power. Financial power. Political power. The kind that operates in boardrooms and government offices instead of back alleys. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we're all looking in the wrong direction. Elias headed for the door, then paused. Be careful, Lena. Someone's playing a game we don't fully understand yet, and the casualties are already adding up. After he left, Lena sat in the booth with cold coffee and a tablet full of potentially exonerating evidence, wondering if she'd just been recruited or manipulated. Probably both. She made it back to the farmhouse before Adrian returned. The tablet was hidden in her room, evidence reviewed and cataloged in her mind. Elias's story checked out, at least on the surface. The timestamps were consistent, the forensic logs looked legitimate, the unauthorized access patterns matched sophisticated hacking. But sophisticated hacking could also be faked by someone who knew what they were doing. Lena was making dinner when Adrian walked through the door. He looked exhausted, the particular exhaustion that came from violence and betrayal, and there was blood on his shirt cuff that he either hadn't noticed or didn't care about. "Tommy?" she asked, not sure she wanted the answer. "Talked." Adrian went straight to the sink, washing his hands with methodical precision. Confirmed everything we suspected. The syndicate approached him 6 months ago, offered money and protection in exchange for information. He sold me piece by piece.
Did he say who hired the syndicate? He only dealt with handlers, never met the client. Adrian dried his hands, then turned to face her. But he gave us names. Other people in my organization who've been compromised. 3 more leaks, all feeding information to the same network. How many people did you lose today? Adrian's expression didn't change. How many needed to be lost? This is what happens when trust breaks, Lena. You can't half commit to cleaning house.
You cut out the rot, or it spreads?
That's not an answer.
It's the only answer you're getting. They ate dinner in tense silence. Pasta Lena had cobbled together from ingredients that probably predated Adrian's mother's death, served on plates that looked like they came from a grandmother's hope chest. The domesticity felt surreal against the backdrop of murder and conspiracy.
I met with Elias, Lena said finally.
Adrian's fork stopped midway to his mouth.
What?
He called me, said he had evidence proving he's innocent. I met him at a diner, reviewed what he had, came back. She met Adrian's gaze without flinching. He knows about the farmhouse. Said if he wanted us dead, he'd have told the syndicate where we are.
And you believed him?
I believed his evidence deserves investigation. Adrian set down his fork with deliberate care. You went behind my back to meet with the man trying to kill me. Plus, I went to verify whether he's actually trying to kill you or if someone's framing him. There's a difference.
There's betrayal.
There's due diligence. Lena's voice sharpened. You're planning to go to war with your brother based on circumstantial evidence. What if you're wrong? I'm not wrong. You don't know that. Not for certain. She pulled out the tablet, set it between them. Elias has forensic logs showing someone hacked his accounts. Timestamps putting him in verified locations during the transfers to Tommy. Evidence that all the payments were made using cloned credentials. Which he could have fabricated. Which you should verify before you kill your only family. Adrian's jaw tightened. You don't understand what's at stake. I understand that you're letting anger override judgment. I understand that someone wants you dead, and they're willing to use your brother as a weapon. And I understand that if you're wrong about Elias, you'll destroy the one person who might actually be trying to help you. Or I'll eliminate the threat before it eliminates me. That's fear talking, not strategy. Maybe fear is the smartest strategy I have. Adrian stood, pacing the small kitchen like a caged animal. 20 years I've run this organization. 20 years of balancing loyalty and violence, trust and paranoia. I've made hard choices, eliminated threats, survived betrayals that would have killed lesser men. And through all of it, the one constant has been that family can't be trusted. Your father, my uncles, every predecessor who died because they trusted blood over instinct. Adrian stopped at the window, silhouetted against darkening fields. Elias is smart, ambitious, and he's been pushing for change I won't give him. That makes him dangerous. Or it makes him desperate to prove himself to a brother who won't listen. You're defending him. I'm questioning your certainty. Lena joined him at the window. Adrian, I've spent 3 years running from mistakes I made when I let fear override judgment. I testified against people I thought were guilty, destroyed lives based on evidence that looked perfect. And some of it was perfect, but some of it was manipulation. And I'll never know which was which because the bodies are buried and the trials are over. This isn't the same. It's exactly the same. Someone is playing you. Maybe it's Elias. Maybe it's someone using Elias. But until you know for certain, executing your brother is the kind of mistake you can't undo. Adrian turned to face her, and in the fading light, he looked older than his years, tired, worn down by the weight of violence and decision. What do you suggest? He asked quietly. Let me investigate. I'll take Elias's evidence, cross-reference it with what Marcus found, trace the actual source of the breach. If Elias is guilty, we'll prove it. If he's innocent, we'll find who's really behind this. And if he's playing you, then I'll be the one who made the mistake, not you. Adrian considered this, jaw working like he was chewing on words too bitter to swallow. Finally, he nodded. You have 48 hours, he said. Prove Elias is innocent or prove he's guilty. But at the end of that time, I'm making a decision, and it won't be gentle. I wouldn't expect it to be. Lena. Adrian caught her hand as she turned away. If this goes wrong, if Elias is manipulating you, then I'll deal with the consequences. The consequences will be your death. Then at least I'll die knowing I tried to save something instead of just surviving. She squeezed his hand once, then pulled away. Get some rest, Adrian.
You look like hell. I feel like it. After he went upstairs, Lena sat in the kitchen with Elias's tablet and her own growing certainty that nothing about this situation was as simple as it appeared. Someone was pulling strings, turning brother against brother, loyalty into weapon. And she had 48 hours to figure out who before the Cade family destroyed itself from the inside out. The investigation took her back to Manhattan. Marcus drove her himself, insisting that if she was going to dig through digital evidence in Adrian's office, she should at least have armed security doing perimeter checks. They arrived at the penthouse at midnight, the city sprawling below like a circuit board of light and shadow. 2 hours, Marcus said, positioning himself by the door. Then we're gone, whether you found anything or not. Understood. The office felt different at night, less intimidating, more intimate. Lena set up at Adrian's desk, spreading Elias's evidence across multiple screens, cross-referencing it with the original findings that had pointed to his guilt. The work was meticulous, exhausting, the kind of forensic accounting that had once defined her career. She traced money through shell companies, followed digital breadcrumbs through encrypted networks, reconstructed timelines from fragmented data. And slowly, a pattern emerged. The hack on Elias's accounts was real. She could see the unauthorized access, the cloned credentials, the expert-level intrusion. But it wasn't random. The hacker had known exactly which accounts to target, which transactions to mimic, which patterns to reproduce, which meant they'd had inside knowledge of Elias's operations. Lena pulled up employee records, cross-referencing people with access to both Elias's systems and Adrian's organization. The overlap was small. Most people worked for one brother or the other, not both. But there were 3 names that appeared in both columns. She was running background checks when Marcus knocked on the door. Time, he said. 5 more minutes. We agreed on 2 hours. Marcus, I'm close. I just need... Her phone rang. Unknown number again. She answered without thinking. Lena Hart. The voice was female this time, cold and familiar. The syndicate woman from the warehouse. You've been busy. Lena's blood froze. How did you get this number? The same way I know you're in Adrian's office right now, investigating Elias Cade's innocence. The same way I know you have 46 hours left to prove something that can't be proven. What do you want? To save you the trouble of dying for the wrong brother. The woman's voice carried dark amusement. Elias is guilty, Lena. Not of hiring us. That was someone else. But he's not innocent. He's been building his own organization for 2 years, siphoning resources, recruiting talent, preparing for the moment Adrian finally gives him an excuse to take over. You're lying. I'm stating facts. Elias didn't hire the syndicate, but he's been preparing for Adrian's death. The only question is whether he'll inherit an empire or have to fight for it. Who hired you then? Someone who wants both brothers dead and the entire organization fractured. Someone who's been playing them against each other for months, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The woman paused. Someone you've already met. Who? Figure it out, Elena Hartwell. You're good at solving puzzles. Solve this one before it solves you. The line went dead. Lena stared at the phone, her mind racing. Someone you've already met, someone with access to both brothers, with knowledge of their operations, with motivation to destroy the Cade Empire from the inside. She turned back to the screens, pulling up the 3 names that had appeared in both Elias and Adrian's employee records. Vincent Caruso, Adrian's CFO, already cleared through investigation and his son's betrayal. Sarah Chen, Elias's chief of staff, no criminal record, no financial irregularities. And Marcus Chen, head of security, 20 years of loyalty, Adrian's most trusted advisor. Marcus, whose sister worked for Elias. Marcus, who'd found the evidence against Tommy Breslin. Marcus, who was standing outside the door right now, waiting to drive her back to Maryland. Lena's hands started shaking. She pulled up Marcus's financial records with fingers that barely cooperated. Clean. Too clean. No irregularities, no offshore accounts, nothing suspicious, which was itself suspicious.
She dug deeper, following a methodology she'd learned at the FBI. Follow the absence of evidence, find what's hidden by being too perfect. And there it was. A consulting company registered to Sarah Chen. Payments from Elias for security analysis. Transfers to vendors that supplied equipment, matching what the syndicate used. All perfectly legitimate on the surface. All managed by someone with deep knowledge of both brothers' operations. Someone who could hack Elias's accounts because his sister had access. Someone who could frame Tommy Breslin because he controlled the investigation. Someone who'd been positioned perfectly to watch Adrian self-destruct while Elias looked guilty. Marcus Chen, the loyal soldier, the trusted advisor, the man who'd served Adrian for 20 years while building a parallel empire in the shadows. Lena. Marcus's voice came through the door, patient and deadly. Time's up. We need to go. She looked at the evidence on the screens, at the pattern she'd finally seen, at the trap she'd walked into by trusting the wrong person. Then she looked at the window, bulletproof, 30 stories above the street, no way out except through Marcus. Coming, she called, her voice steady despite the terror flooding her system. She had one chance. One moment to either run or fight, or find a third option that might keep her alive. Lena grabbed her phone, typed a message to Adrian with shaking fingers. Marcus. It's been Marcus all along. Get out. Run. She hit send, then deleted the message from her phone, erasing the evidence. The door opened. Marcus stood framed in the doorway, and for the first time since she'd met him, he was smiling. You figured it out, he said. I wondered how long it would take. You've been playing them both, Adrian and Elias. I've been preparing for the inevitable. Marcus stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. Adrian's a dinosaur refusing to evolve. Elias is a dreamer without the stomach for what needs to be done. This organization needs leadership that understands both the old ways and the new. Leadership like you. Leadership like me. No apology in his voice, just certainty. 20 years I've watched Adrian make mistakes. 20 years of cleaning up his messes, protecting him from his own blind spots. And what do I get? A salary and a leash. So you decided to take everything. I decided to earn what I deserve. Marcus moved closer, and Lena realized with cold clarity that he wasn't armed. He didn't need to be. Elias's sister provides access to his operations. Tommy provided access to Adrian's. The syndicate provided professional distance. And you, he smiled, you provided the perfect catalyst. Me. The mysterious woman who saved Adrian's life. The financial genius who uncovered conspiracies. The outsider both brothers learned to trust. Marcus stopped at the desk. When you die, tragically, violently, in a way that points to Elias, Adrian will finally have the excuse he needs to destroy his brother. And in the chaos that follows, I'll be the one holding the pieces. Adrian will figure it out. Adrian is emotional and paranoid. He'll see what I show him. Marcus reached for her. Nothing personal, Lena. You're just... She grabbed the letter opener from Adrian's desk and drove it into Marcus's shoulder with every ounce of strength she possessed. He roared, stumbling back, blood spreading across his shirt. Lena didn't wait. She ran for the door, her hands slick with blood, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might explode. The hallway was empty. The elevator was 30 feet away. She almost made it. Marcus caught her at the elevator, his good arm wrapping around her throat, cutting off air and sound. Lena thrashed, desperate, but he was stronger, better trained, and significantly more motivated. Should have stayed a waitress, he growled in her ear. The elevator doors opened. Adrian stepped out, gun raised, eyes cold with the particular fury of betrayal recognized. Let her go, Marcus. The head of security froze, Lena still trapped against him. Adrian? Marcus's voice was calm despite the blood and the weapon. You got her message. I got her message. Adrian's gun didn't waver. 20 years, Marcus. 20 years you were the one person I thought I could trust. 20 years I kept you alive despite your mistakes. 20 years you were positioning yourself to replace me. Someone has to. Marcus tightened his grip on Lena. You're going to put down the gun, Adrian, because if you don't, I'll snap her neck before you pull the trigger. You'll die. We'll both die. You want that? Adrian's finger was white on the trigger, his expression unreadable. Then Lena did something she'd learned from FBI instructors who'd trained her for hostage situations. She went completely limp, becoming dead weight in Marcus's arms. His grip shifted, trying to compensate, and in that fraction of a second, Adrian fired. The bullet took Marcus in the chest. He dropped Lena, stumbling backward, surprise written across his face.
You, he gasped. 20 years, Adrian said quietly, and you never understood. I don't negotiate with traitors.
Marcus fell, blood pooling beneath him, the man who'd planned an empire dying on expensive marble in the hallway of his almost victory. Adrian helped Lena to her feet.
Are you hurt?
I'm fine. Her voice was shaking. How did you, the message, got it 5 minutes ago, called the building, had them lock down the elevators except for mine. Adrian looked at Marcus's body without expression. Should have known it was him. He was too good at finding threats, because he was creating them. His sister works for Elias. I know. Elias called me 10 minutes after you met with him, told me he suspected Marcus, asked me to protect you. Adrian's smile was bitter. My brother and I haven't agreed on anything in years, but we both knew Marcus was poison. So the evidence? Real. Elias has been building his own organization, but he wasn't trying to kill me. He was trying to survive Marcus's game. Lena looked at the body of the man who'd orchestrated months of violence, who'd turned loyalty into weapon, who'd almost succeeded in destroying everything. What now? She asked. Adrian holstered his gun. Now we clean up. Bury Marcus's conspiracy with Marcus. Rebuild what he tried to destroy. And Elias? And I have a conversation with my brother about the future. Adrian looked at her. You saved my life again. You saved mine. Then I guess we're even. He offered his hand. Thank you, Lena Hart, for seeing what I couldn't, for risking everything to find the truth. She took his hand, holding it like an anchor in the chaos. You're welcome, Adrian Cade. Somewhere in the city, sirens began to wail, the sound of consequences arriving, of systems mobilizing, of the world responding to violence that could no longer be hidden. But in the hallway of Adrian's penthouse, two people who'd fought their way through betrayal and conspiracy simply stood together, survivors of a war that had almost destroyed them both. And somehow, improbably, that felt like victory enough. The cleanup took 3 days and left scars that wouldn't heal for years. Adrian's people moved through the penthouse like ghosts, removing evidence, sanitizing surfaces, making a murder disappear into the kind of bureaucratic machinery that turned bodies into paperwork and violence into statistics. Marcus Chen became a casualty of gang warfare, a loyal soldier caught in crossfire between rival organizations. The story was neat, believable, and completely false. But lies were currency in Adrian's world, and this particular lie bought them time. Lena watched it all from the farmhouse in Maryland, connected to the chaos through encrypted calls and carefully worded reports. She'd wanted to stay, to help, to do something useful beyond surviving, but Adrian had insisted she disappear until the smoke cleared. The syndicate still has operatives in the city, he'd said, his voice flat with exhaustion. And they know you're the one who unraveled Marcus's network. Until I neutralize the remaining threats, you're safer where nobody can find you. So she'd returned to the farmhouse that smelled of someone else's memories, and she'd waited while Adrian dismantled the conspiracy that had almost killed them both. On the 4th day, Elias Cade arrived. Lena heard the car before she saw it, the distinctive purr of an expensive engine on gravel that rarely saw traffic. She moved to the window, hand instinctively reaching for the gun she now carried everywhere, and watched as Elias stepped out of a sedan that probably cost more than her entire fabricated identity. He came alone. That was either very brave or very stupid. Lena. Elias stopped at the porch steps, hands visible and empty. May I come in? Does Adrian know you're here? He sent me. Elias pulled out his phone, showing her a text message from Adrian's number. Elias will bring you back to the city. Trust him. We've been having long overdue conversations about family and future. Turns out we agree on more than we thought. Lena studied him through the screen door, looking for deception or threat or any of the tells she'd learned to recognize. But Elias just looked tired. The same exhaustion his brother carried, the weight of violence survived and trust rebuilt from rubble. Come in, she said finally. Coffee? Please.
They sat in the kitchen where Lena had eaten dinner with Adrian, where she'd argued about certainty and consequences, where she'd decided to investigate instead of accept. The space felt different with Elias in it, lighter somehow, less weighted by history. Adrian told me what you did, Elias said, accepting the coffee with both hands like it was precious. How you figured out Marcus was playing us both. How you almost died proving it. I did what needed doing. You saved my life. If Adrian had come after me thinking I'd hired the syndicate, Elias didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Thank you. Thank your brother. He's the one who listened. Only because you made him listen. Elias sipped his coffee, and the silence between them was comfortable rather than tense. Marcus recruited my sister. Did Adrian tell you that? He mentioned it. Sarah's been feeding Marcus information for 2 years. She thought she was helping me, building intelligence networks, maintaining competitive advantage. She had no idea he was using her to frame me. Elias's voice cracked slightly. She's devastated. Quit her job, checked herself into therapy, won't speak to anyone. Is she safe? Adrian's protecting her, says she's a victim same as the rest of us. Elias set down his cup. That's who my brother is under all the violence and control. Someone who understands the difference between malice and manipulation. Someone who punishes intent, not mistakes. You admire him. I've always admired him. I just thought he was wrong about how to run the organization. Elias smiled slightly. Turns out we were both wrong. Adrian needs to evolve, and I need to respect the foundations that make evolution possible. Marcus almost destroyed us because we were too busy fighting each other to see the real threat. And now? Now we're partners. Equal leadership, shared authority, combined vision. Elias pulled out a tablet, showing her organizational charts that blended traditional territory control with digital infrastructure. Adrian handles physical operations. I handle technological expansion. We check each other's blind spots, balance each other's weaknesses. Lena studied the charts. They were elegant, efficient, and probably would have made Marcus Chen furious, which seemed appropriate. What about the syndicate? She asked. Adrian's negotiating. Elias's expression turned grim. Turns out Marcus hired them without fully funding the operation. He promised payment on delivery, meaning after Adrian died and he took over. When Marcus died instead, the syndicate found themselves with incomplete contracts and no client. So Adrian's buying them off. Adrian's making it clear that pursuing the contract would cost more than walking away. He's very persuasive when he wants to be. I've noticed. Elias closed the tablet. He wants you to come back to the city. Wants to thank you properly, make sure you're protected, offer you... He paused, choosing words carefully. Offer you a future that doesn't involve hiding. Lena's throat tightened. I don't belong in your world, Elias. You've been in our world for 3 weeks. You've saved Adrian's life 3 times, dismantled a conspiracy, survived kidnapping and interrogation, and killed the head of security with a letter opener. If that's not belonging, I don't know what is. That's surviving. There's a difference. Is there? Elias leaned forward. You told my brother you were tired of being a ghost. That invisibility wasn't the same as being alive. Did you mean it? Yes. Then stop hiding. Elias's voice was gentle but firm. Elena Hartwell died 3 years ago. Lena Hart has been serving noodles and staying invisible. But whoever you are now, the woman who pulls crime lords into kisses and tracks dirty money and refuses to run when running is the smart choice. She deserves better than either of those lives. What are you offering? A choice. Come back to the city, work with us, use your skills for something more than survival. Adrian needs someone who can see patterns he misses. I need someone who understands both old finance and new systems. And you, Elias smiled, you need something worth fighting for. I'm not a criminal. Neither are we. Not entirely. We operate in gray spaces, yes, but we also provide stability, protect people, maintain order in places where law enforcement has failed. It's not clean and it's not simple, but it matters. Lena stood, moving to the window where she'd watched Adrian stare at fields and wrestle with decisions about family. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and shadow, beautiful and temporary. I testified against criminals once, she said quietly. Put them in prison, destroyed their lives. Thought I was doing the right thing, and maybe I was.
But it cost me everything, my career, my identity, my belief that justice actually exists. And now? Now I'm not sure what I believe, except that sometimes the line between criminal and victim is thinner than we pretend, and sometimes doing the right thing means getting your hands dirty. That's the most honest thing anyone's said to me in years. Lena turned to face him. If I come back, I'm not killing anyone. I'm not enforcing. I'm not intimidating. I'm not becoming muscle. We don't need muscle. We need intelligence, strategy, someone who can see the game board from above instead of from inside. Elias stood as well. Think of it as risk management with higher stakes. Risk management where people die if I make mistakes. People die if you don't. Someone will fill the vacuum Adrian and I are creating. Better, it's someone who actually cares about minimizing casualties. The logic was sound and completely terrifying. I need to think about it, Lena said. Take your time, but the city's dangerous right now. Whatever you decide, you're safer with us than alone. Elias moved toward the door. We're leaving in an hour, pack light. After he left, Lena stood in the kitchen of a dead woman's farmhouse and tried to figure out who she'd become. Elena Hartwell had believed in rules, in systems, in the fundamental order of law and justice. She thought the world was binary, criminals and victims, right and wrong, legal and illegal. Lena Hart had learned that the world was far more complicated, that sometimes criminals protected people better than police, that sometimes justice looked like a bullet instead of a courtroom, that sometimes survival required compromise with principles she'd once thought absolute, and whoever she was becoming, the woman who'd saved Adrian's life 3 times and lived to regret none of it, she was someone who could navigate gray spaces without losing herself entirely. Maybe that was enough. Lena packed her meager belongings into the bag Adrian had given her 3 weeks ago, locked the farmhouse door behind her, and climbed into Elias Cade's expensive sedan without looking back. The city greeted them with familiar chaos, traffic, noise, light pollution turning night into perpetual twilight. Manhattan rose like a monument to ambition and excess, every building a testament to someone's dream or crime or both. Lena had lived here once in another life, when she'd been important and visible and destined for success. Now she was returning as someone invisible made visible, a ghost who'd decided to haunt the living. Elias drove them to a building in Tribeca. New construction, glass and steel, the kind of place where residents paid more in maintenance fees than most people earned in a year. He pulled into underground parking, navigated through security that recognized him immediately, and led Lena to a private elevator. "Penthouse?" she asked. "Adrian thought you'd appreciate not being on the same floor where Marcus died." Elias pressed the button for the 20th floor. "This is a guest apartment. Secure, private, yours for as long as you need it." The apartment was exactly what she'd expected. Expensive, impersonal, decorated by someone who'd never met her but knew what wealthy people appreciated. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, a kitchen she'd never use, and a view of the Hudson that probably cost extra. "Adrian will be here tomorrow," Elias said, setting her bag by the door. "He's finishing negotiations with the syndicate tonight. Should be wrapped up by morning." "What kind of negotiations?" "The kind where everyone walks away alive and nobody talks about what happened." Elias moved to the door. "Get some rest, Lena. You've earned it." After he left, Lena stood in the silent apartment and realized she had no idea what to do with peace. For 3 weeks, she'd been running, fighting, surviving. Every moment had been calculated for danger, every decision measured against mortality. But now, standing in an apartment that cost more per month than she'd earned in a year as a waitress, she had nothing to do except exist. It felt wrong, uncomfortable, like a coat that didn't fit but she was expected to wear anyway. Lena moved to the window, pressing her forehead against cold glass, and watched the city breathe below. Somewhere down there, Adrian was negotiating with killers who'd tried to murder him. Somewhere, the syndicate operatives who'd kidnapped her were deciding whether revenge was worth the risk. Somewhere, pieces were still moving on a board she'd helped rearrange, but didn't fully control. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered out of habit. "Lena Hart." The voice was male, unfamiliar, with an accent she couldn't place. "We should talk." "Who is this?" "Someone who's been watching your remarkable survival with great interest." The man's voice carried dark amusement. "You've disrupted a very expensive operation, Ms. Hart. The syndicate doesn't appreciate disruption. Lena's pulse kicked up. If you're calling to threaten me, I'm calling to offer you employment, the man interrupted smoothly. You have skills we value: intelligence, resourcefulness, the ability to see patterns others miss. And you've proven you can survive in environments that kill most people. I'm not interested. Everyone's interested when the price is right. Name a number. There's no number. I'm not working for people who tried to kill me. We weren't trying to kill you. We were trying to kill Adrian Cade. You were simply collateral damage. The man's tone suggested he saw no meaningful difference. But that contract is now void. Marcus Chen is dead, the client relationship is terminated, and we're actively recruiting for new talent. Find someone else. We will. But I wanted to extend the courtesy of an offer first. You've impressed dangerous people, Ms. Hart. That's rare enough to deserve acknowledgement. Consider me acknowledged and uninterested. Your choice. The man paused. One piece of advice, though. Adrian Cade's world is violent and temporary. People who attach themselves to him tend to die young. If you're looking for stability, you're looking in the wrong place. Thanks for the career counseling. You're welcome. And Ms. Hart, stay interesting. The moment you become boring, you become expendable. Remember that. The line went dead. Lena stared at her phone, processing the conversation. The syndicate was recruiting her. The organization that had kidnapped, interrogated, and threatened her was now offering employment like it was a normal career transition. She should have been terrified, should have run again, disappeared deeper, found a new city and a new name and a new invisible life. But instead she felt something unexpected. Amusement. The syndicate thought she was interesting, thought she had value beyond being Adrian's ally or Elena's ghost. And while she had no intention of becoming an assassin, there was something almost validating about professional killers acknowledging her competence. She was laughing when Adrian arrived. Something funny? He asked, letting himself into the apartment with a key she hadn't known he possessed. The syndicate just tried to recruit me. Adrian's expression went very still. When? 5 minutes ago. Called my phone, offered me employment, said I was impressive and interesting and would probably die if I stayed with you. Lena gestured at her phone. I declined. Smart. Adrian moved to the window, standing beside her but not touching. Though they're not wrong about the dying young part. Comforting. Honest. He looked at her reflection in the glass. The negotiation went well. The syndicate's withdrawing all active contracts related to me, Elias, and anyone in our organization. In exchange, I'm paying them for services rendered and promising not to pursue revenge. You're paying the people who tried to kill you. I'm buying peace. There's a difference. Adrian's smile was tired. Marcus hired them with promises of future payment. They fulfilled their contract in good faith. Punishing them for his betrayal would be bad business. That's very pragmatic. That's survival. The syndicate's a tool, same as lawyers or accountants. You don't destroy tools just because someone misused them. Lena absorbed this, trying to reconcile the logic with her old beliefs about justice and consequences. Elena Hartwell would have been horrified. Lena Hart was starting to understand the difference between idealism and reality. What happens now? She asked. Now we rebuild. Elias and I restructure the organization, eliminate the vulnerabilities Marcus exploited, strengthen the foundation. Adrian turned to face her directly. And you decide if you're staying or walking away. Elias already asked me that. I'm asking again, because if you stay, it's not as a guest or a consultant or someone we're protecting. It's as part of the organization. Family, in all the complicated ways that word means in our world. I'm not family. You saved my life 3 times. You dismantled a conspiracy that would have destroyed everything I've built. You chose to investigate instead of run, fight instead of hide, risk everything for people you barely knew. Adrian's voice softened. That's more family than blood ever guaranteed. Lena looked at this man who ruled through fear and violence, who'd killed his own head of security without hesitation, who'd negotiated with assassins like they were business partners. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a stranger, a target saved by instinct and a split-second decision. Now he was offering her something she'd thought she'd lost forever, belonging. What would I do? She asked. Whatever you're good at. Financial analysis, strategic planning, risk assessment. Elias needs help building his digital infrastructure. I need someone who can spot patterns in data my people miss. Together, Adrian gestured at the city. We need someone who can see the bigger picture.
And the violence, the criminal enterprise, the fact that everything you do exists outside the law?
Will still be there whether you join us or not. The question is whether you'd rather try to change it from the inside or watch it happen from the outside. Adrian's expression was carefully neutral. I'm not asking you to become something you're not, Lena. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are. Brilliant, moral, stubborn, in an environment that desperately needs those qualities.
You're offering me a job dismantling criminal operations from inside a criminal organization. I'm offering you a chance to make a difference in a world that the law can't touch, to protect people who fall through the cracks, to prove that doing the right thing doesn't always mean following the rules. Adrian moved toward the door. Think about it. No pressure, no timeline. But know that whatever you decide, you'll always have a place here, and you'll always be under my protection.
Even if I walk away? Especially if you walk away. Loyalty goes both ways in my world. After he left, Lena stood alone in the expensive apartment and tried to imagine her future. She could leave, build another identity, find another city, start over again. She'd done it before. She could do it again. But the thought felt hollow now. Empty. Like running away from something important instead of towards something safe. Or she could stay.
Work with Adrian and Elias. Use her skills to navigate the gray spaces between legal and criminal. Try to build something better from the rubble of Marcus's betrayal. It was dangerous, possibly fatal. Definitely not the life Elena Hartwell had imagined when she'd graduated top of her class and landed her dream job. But Lena Hart was tired of imagining safe futures that never materialized. She made her decision while watching the city lights flicker against the darkness, while the Hudson flowed indifferent below, while the world continued spinning regardless of her choice. She would stay. The meeting happened 3 days later in a restaurant Adrian owned, but pretended he didn't. Private room, no windows, security thorough enough to make airport screening look casual. Lena arrived first, wearing clothes Elias had somehow procured in her exact size. Business casual, professional without being corporate, the uniform of someone who mattered but didn't need to prove it. Adrian and Elias entered together, a united front that hadn't existed 3 weeks ago. They'd coordinated even their clothing, both in dark suits, both moving with the confidence of men who'd survived assassination and emerged stronger. Lena. Adrian took the seat across from her. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the invitation. Elias sat beside his brother, and the physical similarity was striking now that they weren't trying to kill each other. Same gray eyes, same strong features, same particular stillness that suggested violence held carefully in check. We've been discussing your role, Elias said without preamble. If you decide to stay. I've decided. Lena folded her hands on the table. I'm staying, on certain conditions. Adrian's eyebrow raised. Conditions? I don't kill anyone, I don't order killings. I don't participate in violence except in self-defense. Lena met his gaze. I'll help you run the organization, optimize operations, identify threats. But I won't become an enforcer. Agreed. I want autonomy. If I see something wrong, corruption, abuse, unnecessary violence, I get to address it. No permission required, no oversight. Within reason, Adrian countered. You can't dismantle operations without consultation. But if you see problems, you have authority to fix them. Fair. Lena turned to Elias. And I want transparency. No secrets about what we're actually doing, no lies about the nature of the business. If I'm complicit, I want to know exactly what I'm complicit in. Absolutely. Elias pulled out a tablet. I've prepared a comprehensive overview of all current operations, legitimate and otherwise. You'll have full access to financial records, territory maps, personnel files, complete transparency. Lena absorbed this. They were actually agreeing, actually treating her like an equal instead of a protected asset or convenient tool. One more thing, she said. Elena Hartwell stays dead. If my identity becomes a liability, if people from my past come looking, I walk away and you let me go. No arguments, no protection I didn't ask for. Adrian's expression shifted, something almost like hurt flickering across his face before control reasserted itself. If someone threatens you, we eliminate the threat. That's non-negotiable.
If someone threatens me because of who I am, that's my problem. If someone threatens me because of what I know about your organization, that's your problem. Lena leaned forward. I need to know the difference will be respected. It will be, Elias said quietly. You're not a prisoner, Lena. You're a partner. That means you get to set boundaries. Then we have a deal. Lena extended her hand across the table. Adrian took it first, his grip warm and firm and surprisingly gentle. Welcome to the family. Elias shook her hand next. Welcome to the future. And just like that, Lena Hart, former financial analyst, fake waitress, real survivor, became part of something she'd spent her entire previous life trying to destroy. The irony wasn't lost on her. The work started immediately. Elias set her up in an office in the Tribeca building, not quite as grand as Adrian's penthouse, but close. 3 monitors, secure networks, access to databases that probably violated a dozen federal laws. He walked her through the digital infrastructure he'd been building, showed her the technological frameworks that could modernize Adrian's operations without abandoning the physical control that made them stable. The future of organized crime isn't territory, Elias explained, pulling up maps that showed data flows instead of street corners. It's information. Control the information. You control the money. Control the money. You control everything. That's what Marcus understood, Lena said. That's what Marcus got wrong. Elias zoomed in on financial networks. He thought information was a weapon for taking power, but it's actually a tool for maintaining stability. We don't need to control everything. We need to see everything, predict threats, prevent conflicts, protect the people who depend on us. That's remarkably idealistic for a criminal enterprise. That's remarkably practical for an organization that wants to survive. Elias smiled. Adrian maintains order through force. I maintain it through intelligence. Together, we're building something neither of us could create alone. Lena spent the next week learning the architecture of Adrian's empire, the legitimate businesses that laundered money and provided employment, the protection rackets that actually protected neighborhoods police had abandoned, the supply chains that moved everything from pharmaceuticals to weapons to information. It was vast, complicated, and surprisingly well organized. But there were weaknesses, gaps Marcus had exploited, vulnerabilities that needed addressing, inefficiencies that cost money and lives. Lena built spreadsheets, created models, identified patterns that nobody had noticed because nobody had looked at the organization as a complete system rather than separate territories. And slowly she began to understand what Adrian and Elias were actually building. Not just a criminal empire, a shadow government, an alternative to official systems that had failed the people they were supposed to serve. It was illegal, immoral by conventional standards, and more effective than anything the actual government provided. On the 8th day, Lena presented her findings to both brothers. Your organization bleeds money in 3 places, she said, pulling up financial models. Protection payments to corrupt officials who provide decreasing value. Supply chain inefficiencies from using multiple vendors with overlapping routes. And personnel costs for security operations that could be consolidated. How much are we bleeding? Adrian asked. Conservatively, $15 million a year. Lena highlighted the problem areas. But the real issue isn't the money, it's the vulnerability. Every payment to corrupt officials is a potential leverage point. Every redundant supply chain is a potential breach. Every unnecessary security team is a potential Marcus. Elias leaned forward. Solutions? Cut the corrupt officials who aren't providing value. Consolidate supply chains under unified management. Restructure security into smaller, more accountable units. Lena pulled up revised organizational charts. You'll save money and reduce exposure. You're suggesting we fire police officers we've been paying for years, Adrian said carefully. I'm suggesting you stop paying for protection you're not getting. Some of these officials are actively working against you while taking your money. That's not protection, that's extortion. And the personnel cuts, retirement packages, new positions in legitimate businesses, severance generous enough that nobody feels betrayed. Lena met his gaze. You don't have to destroy people to change systems. Just make the change worth their while. Adrian and Elias exchanged glances. That wordless communication of brothers who'd learned to work together despite years of conflict. Implement it, Adrian said finally, but carefully. I don't want loyalty turning into resentment. I'll handle the communications personally, Elias added. Make sure everyone understands this is evolution, not punishment. Lena nodded, feeling something unexpected. Pride. She was making a difference. Not the kind she'd imagined when she'd testified against Meridian International. Not the clean, legal, socially acceptable kind, but a difference nonetheless. That night, Adrian took her to dinner. Not the restaurant he owned, not anywhere fancy or strategic or designed to impress, just a small Italian place in Brooklyn where the owner knew him as Tony, and the wine was cheap and the pasta was perfect. "This is where my mother used to take me," Adrian said, twirling spaghetti with practiced ease. "Every Sunday after church. She'd order the carbonara, I'd get the bolognese, and we'd talk about everything except what I actually did for a living. She knew, though. She knew. Just never acknowledged it." Adrian took a bite, chewing thoughtfully. "She said once that everyone's got darkness inside them. The question isn't whether the darkness exists, it's what you build around it to keep other people safe." "That's beautiful and terrifying." "That was my mother." Adrian's smile was soft with memory. "She built the farmhouse, kept it clean and ready in case I needed to hide. Never asked questions, never judged, just provided refuge when the darkness got too heavy." Lena sipped cheap wine and watched this man who killed without hesitation talk about his mother with the tenderness of someone who understood the cost of violence. "You miss her," she said. "Every day." Adrian set down his fork. "She died thinking I was a monster. I never corrected her because the truth was worse. I'm not a monster. I'm just someone who made choices and lived with consequences. Monsters don't question themselves. Do you question yourself?" "Constantly." Adrian looked at her directly. "Every death I order, every territory I control, every choice that prioritizes stability over mercy. I question all of it." "But you do it anyway." "Because the alternative is chaos. And chaos kills more people than I ever will." He picked up his wine. "That's what people like you don't understand, Lena. The world isn't divided into good and evil. It's divided into controlled violence and uncontrolled violence. I provide control. That matters. Even when the control looks like murder? Especially then." Adrian's voice was quiet but firm. "I killed Marcus because letting him live would have sparked a war, not just within my organization, but across territories. Other crime families would have sensed weakness, moved in, started conflicts that would have cost hundreds of lives. One death prevented hundreds. That's math, not morality." Lena thought about this, about the calculus of violence, the arithmetic of survival. Elena Hartwell would have been horrified, but Lena Hart was beginning to understand that horror didn't make something wrong, just hard. "I testified against 14 people," she said quietly, "put them in prison for crimes they actually committed. And in doing so, I destabilized an entire financial network. Companies collapsed. Investors lost everything. People lost jobs, homes, futures. I thought I was doing the right thing, but the collateral damage," her voice caught. "The collateral damage was worse than the original crime." "So you learned what I learned." Adrian reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "That right and wrong are luxuries for people who don't have to live with consequences." "Is that what we are? People living with consequences?" "That's what everyone is. We're just honest about it." They finished dinner in comfortable silence, two people who'd survived betrayal and conspiracy by learning that survival sometimes meant compromising principles they'd once thought absolute. The restaurant owner, who wasn't named Tony, brought them cannoli and espresso without being asked. Adrian left a tip that was probably more than the meal cost, and they walked out into Brooklyn night air that smelled of rain and possibility. "Thank you," Lena said as they waited for the car. "For dinner?" "For being honest about what we're building, what it costs, why it matters." She looked at him in the streetlight, this complicated man who'd become something between employer and ally and family. "Most people in your position would have lied, made it sound noble or necessary or anything except what it is." "What is it?" "Controlled violence in service of stability, with all the moral complexity that implies." Adrian's laugh was genuine. "That's the best description of my work I've ever heard. Put it on your business cards." "If I had business cards, I would." The car arrived. Carlo driving, silent as always, protective in ways that didn't require words. Lena slid into the back seat beside Adrian, and they drove through Brooklyn like normal people instead of criminals and their associates. "I have something for you," Adrian said as they crossed back into Manhattan. He handed her a folder. Inside was documentation, new identity papers, passport, financial accounts, everything she'd need to disappear if she chose to. "Just in case," he said. "If you wake up tomorrow and decide this life isn't what you want, if the darkness gets too heavy, if you need to run." Lena looked at the carefully forged documents that represented freedom and escape. "You're giving me the tools to betray you," she said. "I'm giving you choices." "There's a difference." Adrian's expression was unreadable. "3 weeks ago, you saved my life because you had 3 seconds to choose. Every day since, you've chosen to stay. But I want you to know that staying is always a choice, never a cage. What if I use these to disappear with everything I know about your organization? Then you're smarter than I gave you credit for, and I'll respect the play." Adrian's smile was sharp. "But I don't think you will, because you're not the kind of person who runs from commitment. You're the kind who runs toward it, even when it's dangerous." He wasn't wrong. Lena tucked the folder into her bag, insurance she'd probably never use but appreciated having. "Thank you," she said again. "You're welcome." Adrian looked out at the city scrolling past. "Welcome to the family, Lena, for however long you choose to stay." The answer should have been complicated, should have required consideration and analysis and careful weighing of consequences. But Lena had spent 3 years being careful, being invisible, being safe, and she'd learned that safety wasn't the same as being alive. "I'm staying," she said simply. Adrian's smile was worth all the compromises she'd made to earn it. The threat came 6 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. Lena was in her office reviewing supply chain optimization reports when her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. No words, just a photograph. Her hands went numb. The image showed a woman leaving a coffee shop in Seattle, younger, different hair color, but unmistakably Elena Hartwell. The photo was 3 years old, taken 2 weeks before her supposed death, before the car accident that never happened, before she disappeared into the carefully constructed fiction of Lena Hart. Someone had found her old life, and they were letting her know. A second message arrived. "We should discuss your resurrection. Same diner, 1 hour. Come alone, or everyone learns the truth." Lena stared at the screen, ice flooding her veins. This was the nightmare she'd spent 3 years running from, the exposure she'd built walls to prevent. Someone knew who she really was, and they were weaponizing that knowledge. She could tell Adrian, should tell Adrian. He'd promised protection, had given her tools to disappear, had made her family in all the complicated ways that word meant in his world. But the message had been clear. Come alone, or everyone learns the truth. And if Adrian's enemies discovered Elena Hartwell was alive, if they connected her testimony to Adrian's organization, the collateral damage would be catastrophic. Lena grabbed her jacket and left without telling anyone where she was going. The diner looked different in daylight, less threatening, more mundane. Just another Philadelphia restaurant serving mediocre coffee to people who had better places to be. The man waiting in her usual booth wasn't syndicate, wasn't law enforcement, wasn't anyone she recognized. He was early 50s, well-dressed in the particular way that suggested money without advertising it, with silver hair and eyes that evaluated everything. He stood when she approached, extending a hand like they were meeting for a business lunch. "Ms. Hartwell, thank you for coming." Lena didn't take his hand. "Who are you?" "Someone who's been tracking your resurrection with great interest." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Please, this will be easier if we're civilized." She sat, every nerve screaming danger, her hand instinctively checking for the gun she'd started carrying everywhere. It was there, solid and deadly against her ribs. "My name is Richard Castellanos," the man said. "I represent certain interests that were significantly damaged by your testimony 3 years ago. Meridian International. Among others, your investigation into the Ponzi scheme was thorough, Ms. Hartwell, devastating even. 14 people imprisoned, $2 billion in investor losses, criminal networks dismantled." Richard's smile was cold. "You were very good at your job." "I did what was right." You destroyed lives based on incomplete evidence, but we're not here to debate morality. Richard pulled out a tablet, showing her financial records she recognized immediately. We're here to discuss your current employment with the Cade organization. Lena's heart hammered. I don't work for the Cades. Please. I have surveillance footage of you entering their offices daily, financial transfers from their accounts to yours, communications between you and both brothers discussing organizational restructuring. Richard swiped through images. Lena with Adrian at the Italian restaurant, Lena with Elias reviewing digital infrastructure, Lena in meetings that should have been private. You're not just working for them, you're embedded in their leadership. What do you want? Information. The same kind of forensic analysis you provided during the Meridian investigation. Financial records, operational details, evidence of criminal activity sufficient to destroy the Cade organization from the inside. Richard leaned forward. You've already proven you're good at dismantling empires, Ms. Hartwell. Time to do it again. And if I refuse? Then your resurrection becomes public knowledge. Law enforcement learns Elena Hartwell faked her death and has been working with organized crime. The criminals you testified against learn you're alive and exactly where to find you, and the Cade brothers learn they've been harboring a federal witness whose testimony could destroy them. Richard's expression didn't change. You'll be dead within 24 hours. The only question is who kills you first. Lena's hands clenched under the table. You're asking me to betray people who've protected me. I'm asking you to complete the work you started 3 years ago. Meridian International was just one organization. The Cades represent systemic corruption. They control territories, influence politicians, operate criminal enterprises that destroy communities. You testified once about doing the right thing. Do it again. The right thing cost me everything. And hiding with criminals gave you what? Safety? Purpose? Richard's voice sharpened. You're not a criminal, Elena. You're a good person who made poor choices after trauma. This is your chance to correct course before those choices become permanent. The words landed like poison. Familiar arguments Elena Hartwell would have believed without question. The certainty that law was right and criminals were wrong, that justice was clean and systems were trustworthy. But Lena Hart had learned different lessons. I need time to think, she said. You have 72 hours. Richard stood, leaving a business card on the table. After that, the information becomes public. Choose wisely, Ms. Hartwell. After he left, Lena sat in the booth with cold coffee and a business card that felt like a death sentence, trying to figure out which betrayal would cost less. She made it back to Manhattan before the panic attack hit. Not in the office where people could see. Not in the apartment where Adrian's protection felt like surveillance. She ended up in a public park in the East Village, sitting on a bench while her hands shook and her breathing came in gasps and the world tilted sickeningly. Elena Hartwell had died to escape this exact situation. The impossible choice between right and wrong when both options destroyed people she cared about. Lena Hart was discovering that death hadn't solved anything. It had just delayed the reckoning. Her phone rang. Adrian. She almost didn't answer. Where are you? His voice was tight with concern. You left the office 4 hours ago without telling anyone. Elias is worried. I'm worried. I'm fine. The lie tasted wrong. Just needed air. Lena? The use of her name instead of a command was somehow worse. What happened? She could lie, could deflect, could maintain the fiction for 72 more hours before everything collapsed. Or she could do what she should have done from the beginning, trust the people who'd earned it. I need to talk to you, she said. Both of you. Somewhere private. The farmhouse. I'll have Carlo pick you up. Adrian, whatever it is, we'll handle it. Together. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like pressure. Where are you? Lena gave him the address and waited on the bench until Carlo arrived, silent and efficient as always. The drive to Maryland passed in a blur of highway and guilt, every mile taking her closer to a confession she wasn't sure she could survive. The farmhouse looked the same as it had 6 weeks ago, white-clapboard, wraparound porch, fields stretching to infinity. But now it felt less like refuge and more like the place where everything would finally break. Adrian and Elias were already there, waiting in the kitchen that smelled of coffee and old wood. They'd arranged chairs in a triangle, equal positioning that suggested this was a conversation between partners rather than an interrogation.
Lena sat without being invited and told them everything. The photograph. Richard Castellanos. The ultimatum. The 72 hours to betray them or be exposed. She left nothing out, watching their expressions shift from concern to understanding to the particular stillness that preceded violence. When she finished, the silence was sharp enough to cut. Castellanos, Elias said finally. I know that name. He's a fixer for the Antonelli family. They lost significant assets during the Meridian collapse. Meridian was connected to organized crime? Lena's voice was hollow. Your boss wasn't just running a Ponzi scheme. He was laundering money for 3 different crime families. Adrian's tone was matter-of-fact. When you brought down Meridian, you didn't just destroy a hedge fund. You collapsed criminal networks worth billions. Which made you incredibly valuable, Elias added, and incredibly dangerous. The Antonellis have wanted revenge for 3 years. Finding you alive and working for us must feel like Christmas. Lena looked at these 2 men who'd somehow become family, who trusted her with secrets and power and belonging. I'm sorry. I should have told you about Elena Hartwell from the beginning. You told me in Philadelphia, Adrian said. That was enough. But I didn't tell you about the scope, about how many people want me dead, about the fact that my past could destroy everything you've built. Your past already helped us survive betrayal and rebuild stronger. Adrian moved his chair closer to hers. Marcus wanted to destroy the organization. You saved it. Whatever debt you think you owe for hiding your identity was paid 6 weeks ago. That doesn't solve the current problem. Lena pulled out the business card Castellanos had left. In 72 hours, he exposes everything. Law enforcement comes after me for faking my death. The families I testified against come after me for revenge. And your enemies learn you've been harboring a federal witness. So we eliminate Castellanos before he talks, Elias said. That doesn't eliminate the information. He'll have backups, dead man switches, evidence stored with people who'll release it if he dies. Lena shook her head. Killing him just accelerates the timeline. Then we discredit the information, Adrian countered. Make it look like fabrication, revenge porn, anything except truth. Against photographs and financial records? They'll verify it in hours. Lena stood, pacing the small kitchen. There's no good play here. Either I betray you and destroy the organization from the inside, or Castellanos exposes me and destroys it from the outside. The only difference is timing. There's a third option. Adrian's voice was calm, certain. We burn it all down ourselves. Both Lena and Elias turned to stare at him. Explain, Elias said carefully. Lena's right. We can't stop the exposure, but we can control the narrative. Adrian pulled out his phone, pulling up news feeds. Elena Hartwell was a hero. She testified against criminals, survived assassination attempts, faked her death to escape revenge. That's the story. That's the truth, Lena said. Exactly, so we lean into it. Adrian's fingers moved across the screen. We don't hide that you're Elena Hartwell. We announce it. Full press conference, complete transparency. Elena Hartwell is alive, she's been in hiding, and she's ready to testify again. This time against the Antonelli family for threatening a federal witness. That's insane, Lena whispered. That's strategy. Elias was already pulling up contacts on his own phone. If we break the story first, Castellanos loses his leverage. The Antonellis can't threaten you if you're already cooperating with law enforcement. But what about you? About the organization? I've been working for criminals. That destroys any credibility I have. You've been working as a consultant for legitimate businesses owned by the Cade family, Adrian corrected. Nothing illegal about corporate restructuring and financial analysis. We've been very careful to keep you away from anything overtly criminal. That's semantics. That's plausible deniability. Adrian set down his phone. Here's the play. Elena Hartwell survived, has been in protective hiding, recently learned the Antonelli family located her. She approached the Cade organization for security consultation because we have resources law enforcement doesn't. We're cooperating fully with her testimony against the people who've been threatening her. You're turning my exposure into a weapon against the Antonellis, Lena said slowly. We're turning your exposure into protection, Elias corrected. Once you're publicly alive and cooperating with federal investigators, killing you becomes counterproductive. The Antonellis want revenge, but they want survival more.
A living witness testifying against them is manageable. A dead witness who becomes a martyr is catastrophic. Lena sat down slowly, processing the audacity of the plan. This only works if I actually testify, if I work with law enforcement to bring down the Antonelli family. So you testify. Adrian's expression was unreadable. Same as you did with Meridian. Same pattern, same principles, same Elena Hartwell doing the right thing. And you're okay with that? With me working with federal investigators who will absolutely look into your operations? We've been preparing for increased scrutiny since Marcus died, Elias said. Our legitimate businesses are completely clean. Our less legitimate operations are insulated through enough layers that connecting them to us directly would take years of investigation. You've been planning this. We've been planning for every contingency. Adrian's voice softened, including the one where your past catches up to you and you have to choose between hiding and fighting. We're choosing fighting. We're choosing you, Elias added quietly, whatever that costs. Lena looked at these two brothers who'd spent years trying to destroy each other before learning to build together, who'd survived betrayal and assassination and conspiracy by adapting instead of breaking, who were now willing to risk federal investigation to protect someone who'd been in their lives less than 2 months. Why? She asked. Why risk everything for me? Adrian's answer was simple. Because you're family, and family protects family. The press conference happened 36 hours later. They held it at a federal building in Manhattan, coordinated through prosecutors Elias knew from his legitimate business dealings. The room was packed. Journalists, law enforcement, curious observers who'd heard whispers that something significant was breaking. Lena stood at a podium flanked by federal attorneys, wearing a suit that made her look professional and vulnerable in equal measure. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted the microphone, but her voice was steady. My name is Elena Hartwell. 3 years ago, I testified against executives at Meridian International for operating a $2 billion Ponzi scheme. That testimony resulted in 14 convictions and the collapse of several criminal networks that had been using Meridian to launder money. The room was silent, everyone leaning forward. After my testimony, I received credible death threats from individuals connected to those criminal networks. The threats escalated to attempted murder. With the help of federal authorities, I faked my death and entered protective hiding under a new identity. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. Someone in the back whispered urgently into a phone. I remained in hiding for 3 years, believing I was safe. But recently, I was contacted by representatives of the Antonelli crime family who located me and threatened to kill me unless I provided information that would help them expand their criminal operations. Lena paused, letting that sink in. I'm here today to announce that I will not be providing that information. Instead, I'm cooperating fully with federal investigators to provide testimony about the Antonelli family's criminal activities, their connection to the original Meridian scheme, and their ongoing attempts to threaten and intimidate witnesses. The room erupted. Questions shouted from every direction, cameras flashing like lightning, the controlled chaos of a story breaking in real time. One of the federal attorneys stepped forward, raising a hand for silence. Ms. Hartwell will not be taking questions at this time, but I can confirm that she is under federal protection and that we are pursuing charges against members of the Antonelli organization for witness intimidation, conspiracy, and racketeering. Lena stepped back from the podium, and Adrian was there. Not too close, maintaining professional distance for the cameras, but present, solid. A reminder that she wasn't alone in this. How do you feel? He asked quietly as they moved toward a private exit. Like I just painted a target on my back again. The target was already there. Now it's armored. Adrian guided her through security, past reporters still shouting questions. Castellanos loses his leverage. The Antonellis can't touch you without making themselves federal priority targets. And Elena Hartwell gets to be alive again. Elena Hartwell, the federal witness. Elena Hartwell, the person who destroys criminal organizations. Lena's voice was bitter. I'm right back where I started. No. Adrian stopped, turning to face her. You're exactly where you chose to be. Fighting instead of hiding. Using your skills to protect people instead of just surviving. Elena Hartwell testified because she had to. You're testifying because you decided to. What's the difference? Everything. The trial took 8 months. Lena spent that time in a strange liminal space.
Federal protection that was less restrictive than witness protection had been, but still isolating. She lived in a secure apartment, traveled with armed escorts, testified before grand juries and investigative committees. The Antonelli family fought back hard. Expensive lawyers, character assassination, attempts to discredit her testimony. But Lena had learned from Meridian. She documented everything, corroborated every claim, built cases that were bulletproof even under aggressive cross-examination. And through it all, Adrian and Elias provided support from careful distance. They couldn't be seen as influencing a federal witness, but they made sure she had resources, security, and the particular protection that came from being associated with people dangerous enough to make revenge costly. The verdict came on a February morning that felt like spring was lying about arriving. Guilty on all counts. 17 members of the Antonelli organization convicted of racketeering, money laundering, witness intimidation, and conspiracy. Sentences ranging from 15 years to life. Elena Hartwell had done it again. Dismantled a criminal empire through testimony and evidence and the stubborn refusal to let fear override justice. But this time it felt different. This time she'd chosen the fight, had walked into danger with eyes open instead of stumbling into it through naive belief in systems, had understood the cost and paid it anyway because it mattered. The prosecutor, a woman named Jennifer who'd worked with Lena daily for 8 months, shook her hand outside the courtroom. "You did good work," Jennifer said. "These people have been operating with impunity for decades. You gave us the tools to stop them." "I gave you the same tools I gave you 3 years ago," Lena replied. "Evidence, testimony, documentation, the tools were always there. You just needed someone willing to use them." "True. But most people aren't willing." Jennifer paused. "What's next for you? Witness protection again?" "No." Lena looked out at the courthouse steps where Adrian's car was waiting at a careful distance. "I'm done hiding." "Be careful. Convicting 17 people makes enemies." "I know. But staying invisible makes you a ghost, and I'm finished being dead." Jennifer smiled. "Good luck, Elena Hartwell." "It's just Lena now." She offered her hand. "Elena did her job. Time to let her rest." The drive back to Manhattan was quiet. Adrian sat beside her in the back seat, not touching, just present. He'd been at the trial every day he could manage, sitting in the gallery where she could see him, a reminder that testifying didn't mean being alone. "How does it feel?" he asked as the city skyline came into view. "Like closing a chapter I've been reading for 8 months. Good chapter? Necessary chapter." Lena looked at him. "The Antonellis won't come after me now. Too much scrutiny, too many federal eyes watching. I'm finally safe from my past." "So what now?" "Now I figure out who I am when I'm not running or testifying or hiding." Lena smiled slightly. "Suggestions?" "You could go back to finance. You're brilliant at it." "Corporate finance feels small after dismantling criminal empires." "You could stay with us. Elias still needs help with digital infrastructure. I still need someone who sees patterns I miss." "Your organization is under federal investigation because of my testimony. Might be smart for me to maintain distance." "Might be." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "But smart isn't always right, and distance isn't always safe." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you've spent 8 months proving you're Elena Hartwell, the federal witness. Maybe it's time to figure out who Lena Hart is when she's not defined by other people's expectations." The words settled between them, heavy with possibility. "I don't know who that is," Lena admitted. "Then we'll figure it out together." 6 months after the trial, Lena stood in the farmhouse kitchen making coffee. Not the expensive equipment from Adrian's penthouse, just a basic drip machine in grocery store grounds. The kind of coffee normal people drank in houses that weren't fortresses. The farmhouse was hers now. Adrian had signed over the deed 3 months ago, said his mother would have approved of someone who appreciated refuge living in the space she'd created. Lena had protested. It was too much, too generous, too permanent. But Adrian had insisted. "It's not a gift, it's an acknowledgement. You need a place that's yours. Not witness protection, not corporate housing, not my guest apartment. Yours." So she'd accepted. Filled the house with furniture that didn't cost thousands of dollars. Planted a garden that probably wouldn't survive her inexperience. Learned how to live in a space that existed for peace instead of strategy. She still worked with Elias occasionally, consulting on digital security, helping legitimate businesses optimize their operations, using her financial skills for purposes that didn't require testifying. The federal investigation into the Cade organization had stalled, finding nothing concrete enough to prosecute, exactly as Elias had predicted. And sometimes Adrian visited, not often, not with any particular schedule. Just occasionally, when the violence of his world became too heavy and he needed reminder that not everything was threat and transaction, they'd have coffee in the kitchen, walk through fields that belonged to no one and everyone, talk about philosophy and choices and the particular weight of living with consequences. It wasn't romance, wasn't even friendship in the traditional sense. It was something more complicated, two people who'd saved each other's lives multiple times, learning that survival could transform into something like peace. Today was one of those days. Lena heard the car before she saw it, and by the time Adrian knocked, she had coffee ready and the door open. "You look tired," she said by way of greeting. "Territory dispute in Brooklyn. 3 people dead before we negotiated settlement." Adrian accepted the coffee gratefully. "Sometimes I think Marcus had the right idea. Burn it all down and start fresh." "Marcus wanted to burn it down so he could rule the ashes. You're trying to build something better from the rubble." Lena led him to the porch, where they sat in chairs that had probably witnessed 1,000 similar conversations. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Some days I'm not sure." "Some days aren't for being sure. They're for surviving until tomorrow." Adrian smiled at that. "When did you get so wise?" "When I stopped pretending I had answers and started admitting I had questions." Lena sipped her coffee, watching clouds move across sky that seemed impossibly vast after months in the city. "How's Elias?" "Thriving. His digital operations are generating more revenue than my traditional territories. He's already talking about expanding into cryptocurrency and international markets. The future of organized crime. The future of business. Whether it's organized crime or legitimate enterprise sometimes seems like semantics." Adrian set down his cup. "He asked about you. Wanted to know if you consider coming back full time." "What did you tell him?" "That you're figuring out who you are when you're not defined by other people's needs, and that we'd wait until you were ready." "What if I'm never ready?" "Then you live here and plant gardens and drink cheap coffee, and we'll visit occasionally and be grateful you're alive to ignore our job offers." Adrian looked at her. "You don't owe us anything, Lena. You saved my life, helped rebuild the organization, testified against people who wanted you dead. Whatever debt you think exists has been paid 100 times over." "I don't think there's a debt. I think there's—" Lena searched for words. "Connection. The kind that doesn't go away just because you change locations or job descriptions. Family. Family." She tested the word, found it fit better than it used to. "Even when family is a crime lord and his venture capitalist brother." Even then. They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd fought their way through betrayal and conspiracy to find something resembling peace on the other side. "I'm thinking about teaching," Lena said eventually. Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Teaching what?" "Forensic accounting, financial investigation, how to track dirty money and dismantle criminal organizations from the inside." She smiled at his expression. "A local university reached out, said my experience with Meridian and the Antonellis makes me uniquely qualified to train the next generation of investigators." "You'd be training people to do what you do, take down organizations like mine." "I'd be training people to recognize corruption and have tools to fight it, whether they use those tools against criminal enterprises or corporate fraud or government malfeasance." Lena shrugged. "That's up to them. You're going to create an army of people who think like you. I'm going to teach people that doing the right thing is complicated and costs something and matters anyway." She met his gaze. "You have a problem with that?" Adrian laughed, genuine and surprised. "No, I think it's perfect. Elena Hartwell. The federal witness becomes Lena Hart the professor. Teaching people to see through the lies while living in a farmhouse owned by criminals. Owned by you. There's a difference." "Is there?" "You tell me. You're the one who said the line between criminal and legitimate is sometimes semantics." "Fair point." Adrian stood, stretching. "I should go. Elias needs me for a meeting about the cryptocurrency expansion." "Stay for dinner," Lena offered. "I'm making pasta. It won't be as good as your mother's restaurant, but it'll be edible." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." So Adrian stayed. They made pasta in a kitchen that smelled of garlic and olive oil instead of violence and conspiracy. They ate at a table that wobbled slightly, using mismatched plates Lena had bought at a yard sale. They talked about everything and nothing: philosophy, business, the particular challenge of building legitimate lives from illegitimate foundations. And when Adrian left, driving back to Manhattan, and the empire he was slowly transforming into something less violent and more sustainable, Lena stood on the porch and watched his taillights disappear into darkness. She was alone, but not lonely. Safe, but not hiding. Alive in ways Elena Hartwell had never managed, and Lena Hart was still discovering. The teaching position started in the fall. Lena stood in front of a classroom full of graduate students who wanted to be forensic accountants, federal investigators, the people who tracked money and caught criminals through numbers instead of guns. "My name is Professor Hart," she said, and the words felt right in a way names hadn't for years. "I'm going to teach you how to dismantle criminal organizations using financial analysis, pattern recognition, and methodical documentation. But first, I'm going to teach you something more important." The students leaned forward, eager and young and convinced that justice was simple. "I'm going to teach you that doing the right thing costs something, that evidence isn't always clean, that criminals are sometimes more complicated than monsters, and victims are sometimes more complicated than innocents, that every choice has consequences, and living with those consequences is harder than making them." She pulled up a case study on the screen, not Meridian, not the Antonellis, but a fictional scenario complex enough to challenge assumptions. "You're going to learn technical skills in this class: how to trace money, how to build cases, how to testify effectively. But more importantly, you're going to learn how to think critically about what justice means when systems fail and people are complicated and the right answer isn't obvious." One student raised a hand. "Professor Hart, is this based on real cases you've worked?" Lena smiled. "Every case I teach is based on real experience. Some of it mine, some of it from investigators I've worked with, all of it designed to prepare you for a world more complex than textbooks admit. Have you ever had to make hard choices between what's legal and what's right? Every investigator makes those choices. The question isn't whether you'll face moral complexity, it's whether you'll have the tools to navigate it without losing yourself." Lena looked at the young faces watching her, seeing echoes of who she'd been before Meridian, before betrayal, before learning that survival sometimes meant compromise. By the end of this semester, you'll have those tools. What you do with them is up to you. The class was challenging, rewarding, and occasionally heartbreaking. Students who wanted simple answers learning that investigation was messy. Future prosecutors discovering that evidence was fragile. Idealists confronting the reality that justice wasn't always achievable. But they learned, grew, became the kind of investigators who asked hard questions and lived with complicated answers. And Lena discovered that teaching people to think critically about right and wrong was more satisfying than any corporate position had ever been. On weekends, she worked in her garden, planted vegetables that sometimes grew and sometimes didn't, learned that failure was acceptable when you weren't testifying or running or fighting for survival. Sometimes Adrian visited, sometimes Elias, occasionally both, and they'd sit on the porch arguing about digital versus traditional operations while Lena made dinner and rolled her eyes at their fraternal competition that had transformed into collaboration. They never talked about the violence, never acknowledged the illegal operations or the people who died or the particular darkness required to maintain control through fear. But Lena knew it existed, knew that the money funding her farmhouse came from enterprises that operated outside law, knew that the protection keeping her safe was built on threats and reputation and controlled violence. And she'd made peace with that knowledge, not acceptance. She'd never fully accept the cost of Adrian's choices, but understanding, recognition that the world was more complicated than right and wrong, legal and criminal, victim and monster. Sometimes, late at night when sleep was elusive, Lena thought about the sniper who'd almost killed Adrian, about the split-second decision to pull him into a kiss and save his life, about how different everything would be if she'd walked past instead of acting. She'd still be invisible, still be safe, still be a ghost serving noodles and pretending that survival was the same as living, and she'd never have learned that doing the right thing was complicated and costly and worth it anyway. 3 years after the press conference, Lena received an invitation,
Elegant cardstock, expensive printing, the kind of formality that suggested importance. It was from Adrian and Elias, requesting her presence at a private ceremony celebrating the 5th anniversary of their partnership. She almost didn't go. The farmhouse was comfortable, her teaching was fulfilling, her garden was finally producing vegetables instead of just weeds. She'd built a life that didn't require crime lords or federal investigations or the particular adrenaline of dismantling empires. But curiosity won. And maybe something else. The recognition that family, even complicated, criminal, morally gray family, mattered enough to show up for. The ceremony was at the Italian restaurant in Brooklyn, the one Adrian's mother had loved. They'd rented the entire space, filled it with people Lena recognized from the organization and others she didn't. Legitimate business partners mixing with less legitimate associates, everyone pretending this was just a normal celebration. Adrian found her immediately, looking uncomfortable in a tuxedo that probably cost more than her car. "You came," he said, and the relief in his voice was genuine. "You invited me. Would have been rude to decline. You've declined plenty of invitations. I'm glad you accepted this one." Adrian guided her through the crowd to where Elias stood talking to investors. "We have something for you." "I don't need gifts." "It's not a gift, it's recognition." Elias handed her a folder. Inside was documentation establishing a foundation in her name, the Elena Hartwell Memorial Foundation for Financial Justice, funded by the Cade family's legitimate businesses, designed to provide resources for victims of financial crimes and training for investigators. "You're using my old name," Lena said, throat tight. "Because Elena Hartwell did something that mattered," Elias replied. "She testified against corruption twice, at enormous personal cost. That deserves recognition." "And because you keep teaching students to dismantle criminal enterprises," Adrian added with a slight smile. "Figured we should fund the opposition. Keeps us honest." Lena looked at this absurd, generous, completely inappropriate gesture. A crime family funding a foundation named after a woman who'd testified against criminals. It was contradictory, complicated, and somehow perfect. "Thank you," she managed. "Thank you," Adrian countered, "for saving my life, for helping rebuild what Marcus tried to destroy, for showing us that doing the right thing doesn't always mean following rules." The ceremony itself was brief. Adrian and Elias stood together, two brothers who'd learned to balance tradition and innovation, violence and stability, old systems and new possibilities. They talked about partnership, about evolution, about building something sustainable from foundations that had nearly collapsed. And when they raised glasses to toast 5 years of collaboration, Lena raised hers too. To complicated family, to choices made with open eyes, to the recognition that right and wrong weren't always clear, but trying anyway mattered. After the ceremony, after the crowd dispersed and the restaurant returned to normal operations, Lena sat at a table with Adrian and Elias drinking wine that was probably older than her teaching career. "What happens next?" she asked. "We keep building," Elias said. "Expand operations, modernize systems, try to make the organization sustainable beyond our lifetimes. We keep adapting," Adrian added. "Learning from mistakes, protecting people, maintaining control without becoming what Marcus wanted to create. And you?" Elias looked at Lena. "What happens next for Professor Hart?" Lena thought about her classroom, her garden, her farmhouse that represented peace after years of chaos. Thought about students learning to question systems and track corruption and do hard things because they mattered. Thought about this strange, complicated family that had formed from violence and survived through adaptation. "I keep teaching," she said. "Keep learning. Keep figuring out who I am when I'm not running or hiding or testifying." "Sounds lonely," Adrian observed. "Sounds peaceful." "Could be both." "Could be," Lena smiled, "but I've learned that peace doesn't mean isolation, and family doesn't always look traditional." They drank to that, to unconventional families and complicated peace, and the recognition that survival could transform into something like joy if you worked at it long enough. Years later, when people asked Lena Hart about her career, about how a forensic accountant became a federal witness, became a professor teaching the next generation of investigators, she'd think about that night. About the tie that had saved a life and started everything. About the choice to run toward danger instead of away from it. About learning that doing the right thing was messy and costly and worth it anyway. She'd think about Adrian and Elias, brothers who'd built something sustainable from violence and compromise. About students who learned to question systems instead of blindly trusting them. About a farmhouse in Maryland that represented refuge earned through survival. And she'd say what she always said when asked about regrets. I don't regret the choices I made. I regret that I had to make them. But I'm grateful for who those choices let me become. Because Elena Hartwell had died to escape impossible decisions, and Lena Hart had learned to live with them. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the farmhouse felt particularly peaceful, Lena would straighten the ties she'd kept from that rainy night 3 years ago. The silk one she'd grabbed to pull Adrian into a kiss and save his life. She'd hung it in her closet, a reminder of split-second choices that changed everything. And she'd remember that survival wasn't the same as being alive. That safety wasn't the same as peace. That doing the right thing sometimes meant getting your hands dirty, but it also meant building a life worth living from the rubble of who you used to be. And in the end, that was enough.